On this episode of the Star Wars Time Show, Matt and Nick have to deploy yet another special topic because they continue to believe there's always time for Star Wars time, even if Lucasfilm does not. After some Rings of Power and Dragons talk, the dudes will touch on a few new interviews from the Andor cast, which shed more light on what fans can expect to see in Season 1. They'll then riff on some potential plot points they'd like to see in the Bad Batch Season 2. And if time permits, Matt will be challenged to the Mendo game. Of course, the show will end with the Question of the Week responses and the latest round of Top 5 Star Wars Fan Artist Features. Punch it, Chewie!
Hey now, everybody! Let's get our lovely not-for-TV faces up there in the live stream. There they are. Big forehead Matt with a fat beard, and there's Nick, also growing a beard. I'm not sure why he's sporting facial hair, but mine is kind of it's the recovery beard, just like they do for NHL playoffs. When I broke my fucking leg, I was like, you know what? I'm going to shave going into surgery. I'm not shaving again until I can walk with no crutches. So the beard's still here. Which means, Nick, the crutches are still in my life, but only if I go out in public. So if you know me, I don't really go out in public. So I've pretty much been crutchless since Friday, which has been good and bad.
Nice.
Good and bad. Someone like me, I need very clear restrictions with this type of shit, my friend, because, you know, when she's like, yeah, you don't have to use your crutches when you're around your house. I'm like, okay. So I'm down here, like unboxing toys, putting toy boxes up in shelves. I'm getting up on fucking ladders. I did a mile walk on Saturday without a crutch. And come Saturday evening, I'm sitting here going, yeah, I probably shouldn't be doing all this shit considering I just broke, fucking smashed my leg and knee 3 months ago. Sometimes when she says go, I need to approach it more like a turtle than a hare, if you catch my drift. So, but that's been good. Another mental health boost, dropping a crutch for the most part. Cleared to drive again. I kind of feel I've been feeling like a 16-year-old, or I guess a 14-year-old for the past 3 months. I need my wife/mom to take me places. So that's going to be nice. Now we just need to get the other car fixed, and I can start becoming the daddy bus again.
Nice.
So that's your quick update on the saga of the leg. Still far from good, but good from far. You know what I mean? A lot of work left to go to do what I want to do. And the old workout strokes are still happening. So that's kind of counterproductive, Nick, to someone that wants to get back into shape but can't work out too hard, either because of a dead leg or now because of stroke problems in the brain. Just one of those additional universe kick in the nuts that we have to deal with sometimes. But I'm here.
Gotta start light.
I'm happy. There's always time for Star Wars time. That's at least what we keep telling ourselves at the Star Wars Time Show, because clearly Lucasfilm doesn't believe that. Disney really doesn't believe it, but we do, damn it. There is always time for Star Wars time. So yes, even though you see a Rings of Power poster on the live stream, if you're with us on the live stream, if you want to join, hey, 2:30 p. East, Tuesdays on YouTube, youtube.com/Star Wars Time Show. So, Nick, I know in 2 weeks I'm going to be eating these words because my Star Wars life is going to be way busier than I want it to be. We're going to have that 3-episode premiere on the 21st for Andor. A week later, Bad Batch is kicking off, so I'm essentially going to have a 2 for every Wednesday now before I start real work, which, as a Star Wars fan, I'm excited. I think Andor's looking fucking special. We got some topics to talk about today on that. But as a human, I'm like, fuck, I don't want to be doing all this stuff for a few hundred hits and a few new followers. Like, can't we just talk about this shit on the podcast? So
Yeah.
I need to I need to figure that shit out. I'm sure I'll still bumblefuck it, and I'll be doing 6+ videos on the 21st like an asshole that'll be seen by 500 total people. But my mind, it'll make me feel better and that I'm not going to die. But yeah, this fall, when you really sit down and think about it, all this bitching we've been doing about, oh, no Star Wars. Come 9/21, it's probably going to be too much Star Wars for yours truly here, because unlike Nick, I've not been able to disassociate from my fanboyism yet, and I still, for whatever fucking sick, egotistical reason, narcissistic reason, I feel the need to, hey, if I don't break something down so people can hear my thoughts on new Star Wars, the world's gonna end, and that's just, that's just the reality of my fucked up head. So, to make up for the lack of Star Wars, we're gonna kind of tackle some of the pop culture items that came out that might have scared Lucasfilm a bit, to kind of punt Andor away. They didn't want to deal with House of the Dragons talk, or more importantly, more recently, Rings of Power talk. So we're going to do a little bit of that, whether you like it or not. I know Nick's not going to want to talk about House of Dragons, but we're going to talk about it, goddammit. But first, we're going to do some Rings of Power, all right? Don't worry. If you're here for the Star Wars, it's coming. We got a Bad Batch special topic. You never know where our special topics will go, what type of genius will come out of them. But before that, let's get to something that I know Nick is excited about, more so than not Star Wars stuff, because, we've got 2 more weeks. And that's Rings of Power. So, Nick, you have taken in at least the pilot, correct? Or are you 2 episodes deep? Okay. So
I have not seen this.
All right, so we'll stick to pilot-only talk. Spoiler warnings, although it's kind of weird. It'll be like giving spoilers for Andor, even though we know everything big that is ultimately going to come out of it. But hey, we're nice. So let's just focus on the pilot. I'll go ahead and go, since I've already been eating up all the hot air. Then I'll take a break and let you spew for a bit. So first and foremost, I think the money. Let's talk about the money this cost or took to make. I can say that has been well spent. The production looks absolutely gorgeous. I would say it's on par with what Weta and Peter Jackson did in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And they even though they're like, oh, we were going to include Peter and then we forgot to email him. Nick, I still feel like visually they kind of ran with his aesthetic for the world. And I wouldn't really say they created anything new. I mean, the elven ships looked similar. The elven armor looked very similar. So I was a fan of that. I was also pleased to find that they retained Howard Shore in the same way that Lucasfilm did with John Williams for Kenobi, and that, sadly Shore isn't doing the composition or the score for the entire series, but Howard Shore, the composer of the excellent Lord of the Rings soundtrack and Hobbit, I believe, he did do the opening title, just like John Williams did the opening Kenobi theme for the Kenobi series. So I dug that as well. In terms of the content, and being a former scholar of Tolkien beyond just the Third Age, I mean, I've read the Silmarillion, I've read the Unfinished Tales, I've dived into some of the appendices here and there. I mean, there's a reason I didn't have great grades in college, and it's because of my Tolkien studies that I would do during class instead of paying attention. So I will say that there are some inconsistencies, specifically I think with Galadriel. While Tolkien did set up in the Second Age, she was still kind of kicking around being a warrior elven princess. It was never like she had a hard-on for Sauron. Obviously, she was probably concerned about him. But the one weird thing, and I get it, Nick, why they did it in the show, they kind of made it like Elrond and Gil-galad being the High King of, was it Lorien? Lindon.
Yeah.
Lindon. Yeah, there you go.
Whatever, however you say
it. And Elrond, a younger Elrond, maybe he's only about 1,000 years. He he's been awake for a while. You got to remember, him and his brother had the choice of becoming elves or man. His brother chooses to become man. He's the one that kicks off the line of the Numenorian kings. Like, I know my shit enough. So I didn't quite dig the whole Gil-galad and Elrond end around to just kind of placate Galadriel and kind of kick her out of Middle-earth back to the Undying Lands, because I don't really think that's how Tolkien had that shit planned out. I mean, she came with the other elves from Valinor to vanquish Melkor from Middle-earth, but like a lot of the elves, she decided to stay on Middle-earth and became one of the rulers of the three elven kingdoms. So whatever, I get why they had to do it. They kind of had to. You kind of had to distinguish Galadriel as the only elf that was still concerned about the bad, where the others are kind of pushing towards, you know what, we've been fighting darkness for a millennia at this point, through most of the first age and now the second age. Let's try and be happy again, like elves were meant to be. And they kind of are turning their eye to the fact that not all of Melkor / Morgoth's underlings were vanquished, Sauron being the biggest. So whatever, like some of that canon was off. I didn't have any problem with the Harfoots. I love that they're getting Hobbit ancestry in here. The whole elf warrior and the female, that's like, all right, you need a love story in these types of things, so I guess there's one. And they're playing on the whole trope of anytime an elf and a human link up, it usually ends in travesty. I think they even mentioned, right, Nick? He's like, well, there have been two other.
It's all ended in death.
Yeah, and
something like that.
Yeah, I know the one they're talking about, Luthien and Bear, and that's the first ever human elf pairing. And then there was another one that also, I think, led to the fall of Gondolin. So a hidden elven kingdom. But yeah. So I dug all that, and I think the exposition at the beginning to set things up. And would you agree that it opens in the first age when Galadriel's a little kid? Like, they're still in Valinor at that point with the two trees.
Yeah.
So I love that look. I mean, it almost made me wish, like, shit, I could take a Lord of the Rings show set during the beginning of time, where, what was his name? Ea or EU is Iluvatar is like creating.
Iluvatar
is creating his god.
The song.
Yeah, the god children, the demigods, and then the elves were the first to awake. Whatever. Like I'm a fucking dork, okay? Like, I am Tolkien geek. But for a pilot, I don't know. There was something about it. If it didn't have the meteoric end, right? The arrival of the meteor. To me, I don't feel like a pilot. It did a job that pilots are meant to do, meaning really grabbing you in and making it hard for you not to see what's going to happen in the second episode. So I don't know if that's a fact of I know much about this age, so surprises are going to be more or less few and far between, if not canon changes. And I don't know. I felt like something was missing from the pilot that just smacked me in the face and made me go, hell yeah, Rings of Power is here. I can't wait for the next X amount of weeks. But hey, I checked out the second episode, enjoyed it. I think, we're getting a little bit more meat plus more setup, but without Nick seeing that, I don't want to go too much deeper into it. So I would say my initial reception of Rings of Power, at least through the pilot, was in the 70s. High 70s if we're rating out of 100, 7 if we're rating out of 10, 7.5, something like that. So good, but I wasn't blown away. So I'm interested to hear, because I know you were much more excited for this to begin than even Andor. So what was your take on the pilot for Rings of Power?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think they did a fantastic job of capturing the overall essence of the Tolkien universe. Like you said in the beginning of your breakdown, like the attention to detail in the special effects, and then maintaining that same that same aesthetic that Peter Jackson had set forth in the Lord of the Rings trilogy important. I mean, I think the first thing I said to Taylor as we were sitting down watching, I was like, you can't tell the difference between this and those movies. Like the level of quality and workmanship put into the show is fantastic.
Did you have I know I said I'd let you go, but did you have a moment when you saw the trees?
That was the moment.
Okay.
That was the moment when I told her, I was like, this is kind of next level stuff. Like this is what I wanted. And it was that moment when, you know, they crest the hillside, you see the trees. I mean, at that point I was like, all right, I'm all in.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it. Like, but also like I'm approaching this with like a different mindset than you are. Like I am not going to try to pick this thing apart canonically just because there's no way that they can stick to canon perfectly because there's too much. Like once you've cracked open the Pandora's box of saying like, okay, we are now going to start making content that is expressly based off of unfinished tales and stuff that was, in some instances, stuff that was published long after Tolkien was dead, if published at all. I'm just like, I'm not going to sit there and nitpick it anymore. Like I've just gotten to the point in all of my fandom life to where I just don't give a fuck anymore. Like if you make something that's entertaining, that's good, that's well made, and that actually has like good, strong themes that are coherent with the content that was made prior and that fit along with what the soul of the story is that was being told in its originality, then I'm happy with it. Like I'm not going to go through and like pick apart stuff just to do it. So in terms of like what I've seen so far in the first episode, I was extremely happy with it. I think Galadriel casting was fantastic. I think her name is like Morfrid or Morfid.
Yeah, her name is like, far out. Like her real name almost sounds like she was birthed in Middle Earth.
Yeah, I mean she's fantastic. I loved the Harfoots and their inclusion and how they're being used. So at least so far in the I keep wanting to say trailer, but it's the premiere episode. I like that. I like the allusions to Sauron and what's going on over there. I just thought it was a really well constructed show, and I'm excited to see the next episode. I'll probably watch that tonight, and just overall excited to see where it goes because, I mean, ultimately, what's going to end up happening here, from what I've heard. There's not been like a green light for any. I think there may be a green light for season 2, but what is
definitely a season 2 has been greenlit.
But from what I've heard, the plan for this series is, if it does well enough, it would be 5 seasons long. And the reality of the fact is that there's not enough minutia or there may be enough minutia, but like, it would be hard for you to stick to every minute detail of something for 5 seasons, especially when you're going off of like, sometimes you're going off of characters that don't even exist in the Tolkien universe. Like Bronwyn is not an actual character in the Tolkien universe. And, you know, the other characters that are being made for this show, you're going to have storylines that progress for these people and that build for these people that are not going to be relevant to Tolkien's canon or like previous written works. So like, it's very difficult. Like you can go in and like nitpick certain things that are definitely like, you know, in canon and stuff like that. But then once stories start to intertwine and once you start to get deeper into a series where you have characters that have crossing storylines and plot threads and stuff like that, it's going to get a lot harder to say like, well, canon. And now knowing, like we talked about last week, that this Embracer group it now owns, not as licensing the rights of the Tolkien universe, but now fully owns the rights to the Tolkien universe. Like canon is going to be exploded. like people need to realize that in short order. Like if they're actually going to make a Gandalf spin-off movie and a Gollum spin-off movie and all this other stuff, like canon will be blown up. And I think that that Tolkien fans are going to have to, like, there's going to be kind of a day where they have to realize, like, you're either going to have to, like, not watch or accept that what's coming out is going to probably be based off of the soul and the essence of Tolkien and what he wrote, but is not expressly based off of his written words, or you just don't watch anything if you can't handle that. But overall, I'm super pleased with the pilot.
Yeah, I think you'll you'll be happy with episode 2, because there's some good moments in there that, just like I said, we're not quite done introducing new characters and narratives yet, at least through the first 2 episodes of Rings of Power. So yeah, I want to clarify, because I got some people in here like nitpick. Listen, I am not going through Rings of Power like a Star Wars fan watches a Star Wars show. Okay, I'm not sitting there writing down like, fuck, they're making Galadriel go back to the Undying Lands, I hate everyone. I'm just pointing things out, and I ultimately, it's not the canon stuff. I did not find the pilot to be as captivating as I thought it could be. It had nothing to do with canon or existing characters or whatever. It was like, maybe it was too broad for me, maybe too many introductions. I didn't quite get the hook, line, and sinker feel from the pilot that, a lot of people want to feel when they're watching the very first episode of a new series. Yeah, I'm with you. I understand the canon aspect. So let me clarify that. And I don't hate the show either. I quite enjoyed it. I just did not find the pilot to be edge of your seat, I can't look away type of content, which I was kind of expecting for the first episode of this series. I don't know. Maybe I wanted a little more back history. They gave us like 10 minutes of that. We got the opening scene where I still contend elven children would not be mean to each other. At least until they made it to Middle Earth and they let evilness come into their souls. Like, you gotta remember, these people were essentially living on the shores of heaven. That's what Valinor was. It was where the gods set up, and that's where they wanted the elves to live. And it wasn't until Melkor stole the fucking lamps before the trees and essentially banished himself to Middle Earth that he decided he started creating evil and darkness. And he got so fucking evil and dark in Middle Earth that the elves, after he fucked up their trees, now they were like, all right, we got to go do something about this guy. And that's the first time the children of the gods left the shores of heaven. So I don't think kids would be mean to each other. But, that's just another nitpicky thing.
That's an interesting conversation.
That's just me being a fucking sarcastic asshole. Yeah. But I mean, come on. Like, I do not see elven children being shitheads like human children are to each other. So that's it. But I'm digging it. Like I said, episode 2 opens up more things. And I think one thing we can talk about, since, Nick hasn't seen it, and I know that it is one of the big mysteries right now, is the man in the meteor and who that could be. It was teased in the trailers. It's the big kind of cliffhanger end to the pilot. Finally lands, and one of the Harfoots makes it over there. I do appreciate, like I said, that the little people are in here, and that they seem to be, again, they might be one of the main vehicles for kind of exposing us as the viewer to the larger world and what's going on Middle Earth with all the different players. Because you remember the hobbits, I think they even set it up perfectly in the pilot. They're like, listen, we're not meant to be seen. We're not meant to do anything great. We're just meant to be happy, live, and kind of move on to the next location. Like their first introduction, you had those 2 human hunters walking through, and you're like, all right, well, what are we doing with these guys? And then you see that, all right, the reason we were focused on them is because all the Harfoots and the little people, the Hobbit-like people, were hiding. They essentially had to shut down their village to hide from what they called giants. So yeah, it's fun. Listen, I mean, I'm not one of these people that caused Amazon to shut user reviews for the first 3 days of a new episode coming out because sadly,
man.
this series, like many other new series based on popular old school pop culture shit, is getting review bombed to hell and back because of, I don't know. I mean, if you're an Elon Musk bro, he's one of them trying to start controversy. He's sending out tweets like, Tolkien would be, rolling in his grave. There's no portrayals of strong men in this show. Galadriel's the only good character. Like, I don't even know what he's saying there. I mean, he seems to be one of these guys that gets all upset if there isn't, Conan the Barbarian in every fucking movie in every type of genre. It's like, where you been, bro? I mean, the 80s and 90s were decades ago. We really don't have those cartoonish steroid infused manly men in these roles. I don't know. It's just like whatever. But that's.
It's also like in that instance too. It's not even like that's how Galadriel was. Like it's not even like a disingenuous portrayal of Galadriel. No, he
liked Galadriel. He said she's the only one that is done right so far. The men hinting at like the men are all portrayed as pussies, and she's the only one that seems to have an edge to her. And it's like, okay.
I mean, I just don't understand. So his problem is that like the main character in the show is the main character, she's getting the most. Important stuff.
I'm not the most. I'm not the most normal of humans, but I'm not like this sect of males that these. I call them like the Joe Rogan alpha males, like the bros, the alpha bros. I don't understand that thinking, but there's a lot of them, and a lot of them are in my generation, the late 30s, 40s up. There's this feeling like if you don't have, like I said, Arnold's character from Commando as the lead character, you're either, taking the Mary Sue route, or you're neutering the male stereotype. And I don't get it. So luckily I wasn't focused on that type of shit while I was watching, Nick. Just the lack of punch. Like I wanted to feel like the first time I watched The Mandalorian, like, oh my, the whole time just like, ah. And I do think some of it is because this is a story. I ultimately know what's going to happen. I mean, hopefully I'll get surprise. Like Nick said, they're going to have to craft new stories and in their own canon. But I know where everything's going. So I don't feel like they gave me anything to be surprised about quite yet, outside of Meteor Boy, who at this point, Nick and I were talking offline. The good chance it's an Istari, which would, for those of you that aren't Tolkien geeks, the wizards, the Gandalfs, the Saurons, the Radagast. I know. I almost think that you might have nailed it when we were talking offline, and I'll let you'll get to it, but I think you may have nailed one of your the blue wizards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we don't know, one, even the names of the blue wizards, and two, we were never exposed to the blue wizards in the Third Age,
correct,
or in any age in any way.
And they're just casually mentioned, right? I mean, doesn't Gandalf bring them up in passing or something like that?
Yeah, I don't even think they never even they definitely don't get mentioned in like actual like filmed stuff, like in Lord of the Rings or in The
this
Hobbit.
Would have to be reading the books and the appendices and shit like that.
Yeah, like they're only mentioned in passing by Gandalf,
right,
in the writings. So like, I do think that you may have given the best, probably the best potential option.
Because let's look at a few others. At first, I was like, oh, that's going to be Anatar. And for those of you that aren't keeping score, Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, is Sauron's fair form. That's how he's able to trick Celebrimbor into forging the Rings of Power. But if you think about it, if you're going to take a fair form, why make yourself look like a hobo? B, if you're the Dark Lord who is trying to hide from the elves in the light while you rebuild your forces on Middle Earth, you're probably not going to announce your re-entry into the game via a meteorite shower, okay? It's just not a great idea. And B, while I hope it's not Gandalf or Radagast or Saruman, they're an age away. Like, these are some canon things where it's like, yeah. I mean, the Astari were sent in full force in the Third Age to help deal with the Rings of Power, Sauron, all that shit. Like, that was their main purpose. That's why Gandalf comes back and he's reborn as the White, because he did not achieve his purpose. So Gandalf showing up now, I mean, he's showing up thousands of years early, a full age early, in fact, because I think, Nick, you may know better than me, but we're only like maybe 1,000 years into the Second Age at this point in time. And I'm getting that just based on Gil-galad, be like, oh, we've had, Galadriel and her elven warriors for centuries trying to chase down any sightings of Sauron. So I'm guessing we're about 1,000 into Second Age.
Yeah. And I think too that they've shown Sauron's fair. They've shown Anatar in the trailers.
Yeah, and he is like he looks elfin-like. I mean, he's a very fair-looking elf. That, like,
blonde. He's got like blonde hair, but it's almost like shaved, like that shaved blonde-headed kid, and he looks kind of young.
Right.
So I think like it would be odd if you were to introduce him in that form and then have him switch to look like an elf. So that, I mean, also like I don't want to say it's a new character yet, but like it's like I said, like we're working in an area where like you have to have new characters. It's just necessary to storytelling. So it could be a totally new character, and it could even be both. It could be a blue wizard that is a new character because we have no idea who the blue wizards are. And I do, like, I'd have to look it up again, but I do believe that the blue wizards were sent to Middle Earth earlier than the rest of the Astari for like, not like almost like reconnaissance purposes, just to like see what this land is and like see what the inhabitants were like.
Yeah, because the Astari, for people that aren't familiar, they're best described as like angels. They're not gods. They're not demigods. They're angels. They're on the same level as I don't know how you pronounce this, the Maya. They're Maiar.
Maya, yeah.
Which is what Sauron is. So
yes.
Sauron's a little bit high. I would say he's probably a little bit higher than a Gandalf and a Balrog, but Balrogs are essentially the same level as an Astari in terms of fantastical beings in Middle Earth.
Like the Balrogs are like corrupted, or like Maiar that were corrupted by Morgoth during the First Age.
Yeah,
that's how they are now.
The Valar are your main gods. The Maiar are like your sub demigods, angels, and then Istaris are kind of like a branch of the Maiar. So this is super fucking dorky, but like I told you, there was something about when I went and saw Fellowship of the Rings that just a fucking light bulb went off. You gotta remember the time period is in between the prequels, and it was in between crazy internet and social media. So I needed something to keep my sci-fi and fantasy brain kind of engaged in between the Star Wars prequels, and it became Tolkien. I remember being read The Hobbit as a little kid, or even reading it, but nothing with Lord of the Rings. And when I saw Fellowship of the Rings, even it being almost 3 hours in a theater as a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, I came out of it going, holy fuck, how have I missed this story my whole life? What is going to happen next? So I went headfirst into Two Towers, Fellowship, and then it was, all right, now I got to read The Hobbit again. And I was like, well, fuck, they keep mentioning all this shit, these Silmarils and this and that and this family and this song and Fëanor and Elendil and Beren and Luthien. I'm like, well, who are these fucking people, and how do they have an effect on these people's journey? So then I'm getting into the Silmarillion, and then the appendices of all the novels, the unfinished tales, like Nick was saying. So I went nuts. It was almost a reaction to me not loving the prequels and still pretending I did. Nick was kind of like, I don't want to dive into Star Wars anymore because I'm not liking what I'm seeing. So I'm going to go fucking literally head first into Tolkien. And that's what happened in my early 20s.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and it's like I said, I think I may have said this on a previous podcast when we were talking about Tolkien too was that that was the first grandiose representation of high fantasy in movie form that we had seen in a while. I mean, you would have to go back to Conan the Barbarian and Princess Bride and stuff like that to really get back to a time before the Lord of the Rings movies where we were seeing high fantasy regularly.
That's a good point. Yeah, it was not a genre that made it into movies. I mean, Willow would have been one, but it's you could do it on one hand, I bet. You're right.
Yeah, prior to that, I mean, and there were animated versions of the Lord of the Rings that had come out prior to that, but it was never
trippy as fuck. They're all done by people in the 70s on acids.
Yeah. Exactly. It was always cheaply done and not really given the care that it deserved. And then for the first time ever, really, you dove into a high fantasy realm with a huge budget and, some legitimate star power in some of these roles. And I think that's what really attracted people to it, because the last time they had seen anything that was fantasy oriented was probably 20 years in the past. It had been such a long time. So, I mean, for people like us, it was just okay, yeah, now this, we're hitting on something that I know that I've wanted, but I didn't know that existed.
That's how it was to me. It was holy shit, this is tickling my tits, as George Takei likes to say. But for some reason, up until my 20s, I had really no clue that this type of high quality fantasy existed. It just goes to show I'm a fucking degenerate. I wasn't paying attention as a little kid, or my parents weren't reading the right books or reading to me at all. That's probably why I don't like words and shit.
Yeah.
But no, it sucked me in. It really, I mean, it's something. And Bat, you're not wrong. The Silmarillion isn't necessarily a traditional book. It's all over the fucking place. I mean, it tells of the creation. There's a whole huge part on creation. Then there's a huge part on the downfall of the created and how Middle Earth comes to be. Then there's a little bit on the Second Age and the Rings. And then there's even a little bit on the Lord of the Rings in the Silmarillion. It's all over the place.
The way that I would describe the Silmarillion is if you've ever written anything that's fantasy oriented, it's a lore doc. It's where you keep it's basically Tolkien's encyclopedia of the history of Middle Earth. It's not it is definitely not a story driven book.
No,
there's not a book to give you.
There's not really a
history
plot outside of the loose plot of the Silmarils and what they are and what happens to them and how they get back to the elves. That spans. We're talking millennia.
8,000
thousands and
years
thousands of years. But by the time some of the stories are ending, it's the 8th generation of the one character's kids that finally resolves the fucking story. Yeah. But I mean, it is a masterpiece because you're a dude, one guy thought of all this, created their languages, created not just everything about their language, verbs and participles. I don't even know what that shit means anymore, but he created all that for every different race. Every race has a history. Every race has a creation point, like how the dwarves were the creation of, I think, Ali or the god. It's essentially the smithing god, literally birthed dwarves out of the fucking rock. That's why they're little and hardy and they're good at digging and mining. It's nuts.
Dude. The level of depth that he goes into on that is
crazy.
Insane.
It's crazy.
One thing I wanted to bring up about the pilot episode too that I really appreciated was there was a level. I mean, this is going to be kind of an odd word to use because we're talking about elves, but there was a incredible level of humanity shown in the elves when essentially Galadriel is talking about having PTSD. She's I have this pain in me from the experiences that I've had that I don't want to bring back to the Undying Lands.
You're right.
To stay here and purge this from myself before I go to Valinor. And that's what we see in the Lord of the Rings at the end when she denies, not at the end, but when she denies or when she refuses to take the ring from Frodo when they're in Lothlorien.
Right.
And like that, I feel like that setup, like that moment, knowing why Galadriel is still in Middle Earth, and then that final moment in the Lord of the Rings where we see like she actually says like I can remain myself and go on to the Undying Lands now. I thought that was an awesome moment. And there were also other, like, I told Taylor one thing. I was like, I know that other people have noticed this, but I know that it's just like the ultra geeks. And it was like, it was during a conversation between Galadriel and Elrond, and like they're talking, it's during the conversation where Galadriel is telling Elrond, like, I don't want to, like, I'm going to tell Glorfindel that I'm not going back to Valinor. Like, I don't want to do it. And he says something to the degree of like, the only reason that you're staying is a shadow and a whisper, like from the east. And like, that is literally word for word how she describes Sauron how Galadriel describes Sauron in the beginning, in like the introduction of Lord of the Rings, when they're going through the history of the rings. And she says something like, a shadow and a whisper from the east is now forming. And that's when they talk about
that's good.
The rise of Sauron in the Third
I didn't
Age.
pick up on that. That's a good catch there. But yeah, that's the stuff I live for. So I'm going to have to pay a little more close attention. But there you go. Rings of Power. Nick's got to watch episode 2, episode 3, dropping Friday. I'm going to try to watch it before next week. So at least until Andor comes on, you should probably expect some Rings of Power breakdowns for the time being. We'll probably kick it to the wayside unless people are digging Tolkien talk. We can keep doing it. But since we had a light Star Wars day, I figure why not? Let's get a little bit of a more meatier breakdown of a non-Star Wars property. So we'll move on from Rings of Power. We got a question here in the live stream chat. Dwarfs live how long? I believe dwarfs can live into the hundreds. I'm not sure if they can go thousands.
I think it was like, I looked it up, and I don't know if this is different between different properties, but like, I think it's like between 350 and 400 years. So like once you're at like 150, you're like middle-aged as a dwarf. And
then at this time, once we do meet the Numenorians, that they can live about 200 years, a little over 200 years, because they are descendants of Elros, who at one time could have been an elf. But because of elves fucking humans, they essentially made a new rule. If that happens and they have kids, the kids have to decide if they want to be an immortal or man. And those that decided to become man kicked off the great line of kings that Aragorn was a part of. So there you go. There's your super dorky, too much in detail lore drops, knowledge drops of Rings of Power, currently on Prime Video, their biggest ever debut. All right, so we got a few other non-Star Wars things real quick here. House of Dragons. I know last week I still hadn't watched any. Nick checked them out. He wasn't too high on it, so I was like, you know what, let me give it a peek. And I finally have watched episodes 1 and 2. I've not seen the new one, which released 2 nights ago, Sunday night over the Labor Day weekend. So I guess, if anything, that kind of speaks to... It hasn't become appointment TV yet for me, Nick, House of the Dragons. But unlike you, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the music and I'm having like a Pavlov's dog reaction, or the fact that, Rhaenyra's just exudes Daenerys to me. The dragons, I don't know, man. They're using the same theme song. They broke out the map again, the intro. There's so much familiarity in House of the Dragons that by the time episode 2 ended, I turned and looked at my wife. I was like, they fucking did it. They fucking sucked me in again. And I didn't think there was a remote chance that would happen based on the last season and a half of how Game of Thrones went. And, to me, I felt like it went off the rails a bit. Nick was saying before we went live that Martin more or less has just given up because other people have taken his work and have essentially finished it for him. But I don't know what it is, Nick. And I know you're not high on it and you don't give a shit and you'll watch it because a friend wants to. But there's something about House of the Dragon that takes me way back to 2010. where you're just sitting there like, oh man, there's that feeling of tension in the air. Like, what's this family going to do next that's fucked up? Who's going to make a move? And I'm digging it. And I think one of the biggest aspects or the two things that draw me in the most to House of the Dragon is Rhaenyra's, at least the young one. I haven't seen the time jump yet. Rhaenyra's, in particular, the moment in episode 2 where she shows up at fucking Dragonstone on her own, on a dragon, and essentially says to her cousin, fuck you. I love the lady. Like, she's instantly already a favorite pop culture character of mine, and you can see how she is a direct ancestor of Daenerys Targaryen. There's a lot of similarities there in how they behave, how they act, and who they want to be. And the uncle she went after, I think Matt Smith's Daemon is a fucking amazing bad guy, shady guy type of antagonist when he should, if you think about the story and the time setting, he should be a protagonist considering he's a Targaryen and they are dominating Westeros at this point in time. So I'm right back in, man. I wouldn't even say it's much different than Game of Thrones. They're still plotting for the Iron Throne, even though now it's just within the Targaryen family versus all of Westeros. But I'm digging it. There's something about it. Call me a fool, a dope, whatever. But they've managed to suck me back into Westeros.
Yeah, I think for me, it just feels lazy. It feels like you're just telling the same story with characters that just have different names. And even though we're 200-ish years in the past, like, nothing is different. Like, everything is exactly the same.
There's just a few more dragons in the world, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
like that's the only thing is that, like, every now and then you see a dragon, but even within not Lord of the Rings, even within Game of Thrones, like the dragons eventually come back. I mean, I don't know. I kind of fell off as a fan of the Lord of the Rings, not Lord of the Rings.
How dare you?
That is my, like, that's all I care about right now is the Lord of the Rings shit, because the Game of Thrones stuff just seems kind of middling to me. But, like, I kind of fell off, like, after season 7, because I thought season 7 was relatively weak too, and then season 8 was just a travesty.
Yeah.
He hasn't, like, even book 5 was bad. Like if you've read the books, which I assume that a lot of our listeners have, like, even book 5.
He stopped writing where she gets captured after she rides Drogon out of the Free Cities, and she gets captured by the Dothraki again. If you can remember that far, but that's where he is at in the books. Like, that's how far back he still is.
I mean, it's just like after the third book was his peak, because in 4 and 5 he essentially splits them off into different sections. Like, he tells one book is focused on characters that are in Essos, which is the east, and then one book is focused on characters that are in Westeros. And, like, at that point, like, book 4 was okay. You followed a character in book 4 that you just don't give a shit about. And it's like this like knight that's following whatever's daughter,
oh, dude,
Cersei Lannister's daughter.
They're even in the book like that. I know who you're talking about. Like, that's a main player even in book 5, because they're supposedly presenting another contender to the throne, like another potential Targaryen. Yeah. Like, it's supposed to be one of the babies that what's his name was supposed to have smashed when the Lannisters and Baratheons took over King's Landing from the Mad Kings. So,
and then, like, they like completely, well, they didn't completely skip it, but
it's gone. It's not in the show at all. Like, that knight and that character, they completely
they're
eliminate
both gone.
that.
So, like, but, like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, this one, we'll see how it progresses, but also knowing that, like, I mean, kind of similar to Lord of the Rings, where, like, you know the ultimate outcome, but, like, I feel like knowing the ultimate outcome for this one just makes it even less interesting, because especially concerning the fate of Rhaenyra Targaryen, who is the primary character, at least so far in this series. The primary fate for Rhaenyra Targaryen is complete shit. And, like, and we're so far away from, like, where the regular characters are, but it doesn't, like, where the Game of Thrones characters are, but it doesn't feel like it. I wish that there was more of a, like, a feeling of like this is in the past and this is how you can tell and this is different, where like everything just feels so the same as to Game of
It
Thrones.
does. I mean, and maybe that's why I got sucked in, because it is so familiar. Another reason is, and I've learned this about myself, and I don't know why this is, but just like Star Wars and the excitement I had for the prequels, for some reason, I get hard-ons at the notion of going back in time and being able to see how things develop to create the property that I'm currently enjoying. Does that make sense? Like, with me, the prequels, I was like, okay, I want to see the Clone Wars and Anakin and this and that and this and that. And I want to see how those moments, those deeds, those characters affected what I've come to love in A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi. Same with Rings of Power. And why I went back to read all those books. It wasn't like, oh man, The Lord of the Rings sucked or The Hobbit sucked. I want to try one more thing from Tolkien to see if he really is as good as people tell me. It was no. My mind was clamoring for, hey, that fucking poem that Frodo read that said this about those two people 10,000 years ago. I want to find out why. Why were these people singing about these people thousands of years down the road? What heroic deeds or misdeeds did they do? It's odd, and I'm experiencing the same thing in House of Dragon here, where, and you're not wrong. I mean, when they're in King's Landing, it looks like we're right in the timeline of a Game of Thrones. Outside of, I think the Sept is still there. It hasn't been blown the fuck up by Cersei yet, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's just the little things, like, learning about how this Valorian guy is trying, he wanted to reinforce his bond with the Targaryens and how they're the only two surviving family from Valyria, which, gets brought up in Game of Thrones, but you don't understand, like, Valyria, that's like where the great kingdoms were, the advanced society. And that's why the Targaryens and their ability to command the dragons became the rulers of not only Valyria, but then ultimately Westeros, because they were like gods. Even this Valoran character, the Sea Master, I forget his fucking name. His family is automatically above every other family in Westeros because they came from Valyria. Not these bums, the Andals, that essentially came from caves and eventually became the kings of Westeros until, what's his name, Aegon came over and fucking fricasseed them all and made them bend the knee and form the Iron Throne. So you're not wrong, man. I mean, it's just, I think it's my childlike wonder. And, can I see some of these bricks being laid 200 years prior that are going to maybe expand upon or clarify or flesh out stuff that I know about in the A Song of Ice and Fire timeline. So, I'm excited to watch episode 3. I've heard there's a green screen flub, which I'm guessing they've probably corrected by now that it's been outed on social media. But I'll probably be watching that tonight. So, hey, I'm there. I'm a dummy. I lap this shit up. I'll tell you if it sucks. I'll tell you if I like it. But these days, end of the night, have a little smoke and a pancake. I can tolerate pretty much anything without getting annoyed or wanting to roll my eyes. All right. Last but not least, just a quick recommendation. If you're on the live stream, I have an image of Kevin Hart and Marky Mark on my screen, and that's because, like good parents, we watched Me Time this week with a 6-year-old. It's a new comedy on Netflix starring Marky Mark and Kevin Hart. I tend to like watching anything Kevin Hart. I think he's kind of funny, even if the movies are usually fucking dumb as hell. And that's kind of what I found with Me Time. So if you're looking for a light R comedy that you probably could get away with watching with not real young kids, but younger kids, Me Time on Netflix isn't that bad. It's got some pretty stupid moments in it that'll make you laugh. And I always like seeing short people on screen because I am one. And now my daughter is starting to realize how short her dad is. So anytime she sees a short guy, she's like, hey, he's like you. Are you taller than him? Is that what you look like standing next to other people? I'm like, yeah, thanks for reminding me. That is what I look like. Poor Kevin Hart. But yeah. So, She-Hulk, listen, I've been enjoying She-Hulk. The whole twerking controversy, like, people, get a fucking life. That's all I gotta say. Like,
I've seen the first 2 episodes, and I'm actually like, I like it because it's different.
Oh yeah, it's like it's almost slapsticky in the vein of MCU.
Yeah,
she's breaking fourth walls left and right. So I've been digging She-Hulk, and twerking, not twerking. I mean, come on, who cares? Tony Stark. I mean, we all know what Tony Stark sacrificed his life for. It's so people could twerk. All right, get over it, you fucking weirdos. It's like the Star Wars fans that get up in arms over dumb shit. It's like, it's fucking fake. First and foremost, Tony Stark is not a real person. Robert Downey Jr. is Robert Downey Jr. He's a very wealthy actor. That's it.
He's still alive. He didn't snap his fingers and explode. Like,
no, I saw him. Like, Tony Stark died for this. Like, all these memes. It's like, God, dude, you people, like, what is wrong in your life? Like, what is going wrong in your life? All right. How about a little Star Wars, Nick? We're about an hour into the show, and we really haven't said much about the thing that we feel there's always time for, and that is Star Wars. And like I said, we got a little special topic for you, but we do have some interviews, some quotes to read about Andor. First coming from Diego, and then after that, we'll talk about some Genevieve O'Reilly quotes. One thing, just to further something that depressed me that I learned, Genevieve is only 45, which means she's only 3 years older than me, which means she was in her early 20s when she got cast to play Star Wars and has had that luxury in life to have been in Star Wars for over 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And the thing about
that is a good,
like what I would have, if you got to think, she was cast for Revenge of the Sith, so they probably started shooting that in 2003, 4, something like that, because it came out. Well, hell, they probably started shooting it definitely in 2003, if not towards the end of 2002. So, I mean, she would have been like 25. I've been in like 22, 23, and I'm like working at a fucking Kroger manufacturing plant doing IT, and she's on the set of Revenge of the Sith, which 20 years from now is going to lead her to a starring role in Andor. So there's another big fuck me from the universe. Thank you, universe. I love you. Just reminded me of all the bad choices I made in my adult life and not doing what I want to be doing, like Genevieve. So anyways, Nick, we've been trying to tell Star Wars fans for a week now that Andor is not a Star Wars show for Star Wars fans. Gilroy last week straight up said Andor is for non-Star Wars fans, more than the fanboys and fangirls, the type of people that listen to the Star Wars Time show. So, Diego is the next cast member to come out and say, like, listen, Andor is different from all other Star Wars. So, I mean, this is really what they're selling us on, Nick. So
it's getting tiring,
right? Because
if you look at the answers, they're not actually talking about Andor at all. They're not talking about the show. They're just talking about Tony Gilroy constantly. And I don't fucking care about Tony Gilroy.
Do you, all right, we can run off of that angle. Do you think this is all, superfluous stuff from them because they look at Tony Gilroy the same way you and I do? Or do you think they've honestly been kind of spellbound by Tony and they have bought into Tony's vision for Star Wars, which is anti-Star Wars?
I think that at this point, you can't, actors can't say anything they actually think right now. Like, this is promotion for the show that has yet to come out yet. So whatever thoughts they have, whatever actual thoughts they have, they can't say it. Like, just go back to the marketing material and all of the interviews that people did for TLJ, and then go look at what they said 2 years after that movie came out. Like, they were widely different in terms of how the actors actually spoke about their experience on the show and in the movie. I'm not saying that that's what the case is for this, but there's only a certain amount of things you can talk about, and it seems like the only thing that anybody wants to talk about this show is how Tony Gilroy made it because he doesn't like Star Wars. And it's like, because this is literally the question as it is posed to Diego. So this is The Hollywood Reporter asking Diego Luna a question. The first 2 words in it are Tony Gilroy. And it says, Tony Gilroy has said in the past that his superpower was not being a lifelong Star Wars fan, as that's allowed him to make bold choices on Rogue One. I feel the lack of fear on Andor as well. Could you also sense that he was unafraid to tell a new type of Star Wars story? And then within 4 words of Diego's response is Tony's name again. I think so. Tony is just not afraid, period. But here's the thing that people need to remember about Rogue One. 95% of that movie he had nothing to do with. Like,
only the good stuff, right? Only the good stuff.
Nothing. Like, if you like that movie from stem to stern, from beginning to end, then like you like 95% of a movie that Tony Gilroy had nothing to do with, and then you like the ending that Tony Gilroy had something to do with.
Fucking hack Gareth Edwards.
So, like, I'm so confused how a movie that is over 2 hours long is the success of it is solely put on a dude who wrote the last 20 minutes.
It's because that's all he's told us since he did that work. I mean, he was no different when he did Rogue One. He came out and essentially, this is what I imagine. I imagine he had like a Clark Kent moment when he was asked this question. He went like this. Once they asked him, like, so what did you do for Rogue One? He put up his finger and said, wait. He then took his shirt, ripped it open, and there was an S on his chest. And he proceeded to say, I'm fucking Superman, bitch. Tony Gilroy knows everything. I am Star Wars now. You like Rogue One because of Tony. And that was it.
Yeah.
And now, like, you're right. Like, I didn't even look at it this way. The media is essentially asking questions the way Tony Gilroy wants them to ask questions, which
even the next question. Like, what do you think of Tony's plan for season 2?
Yeah.
It's like, you do realize that you're talking to not Tony Gilroy, right? Like, you can ask this guy questions about like what he did in the show. What are his thoughts? Like anything else. But like all they ask is questions about Tony Gilroy. It's just it's to a point to where I'm like, dude, what the fuck is happening?
Well, the other thing, it's almost like the cast is in on it now too, because if you read Diego's first reply, he says, "I think so. Tony is just not afraid. Period." Laughs. Like the interviewer had to put in the laughs in brackets to let the reader know when Diego was responding to their question on Tony, he was essentially laugh responding, which usually means like, "Hey, I get where you're going with this Tony Gilroy dude, so I'm with you. Wink, wink. Let's do the interview." So it's almost like his cast now understands, regardless of what type of press they're doing, they got to toe the Tony Gilroy line. And Nick, you hit it on the head. It's like they're not even interviewing Diego. They're just interviewing Tony through Diego.
Yeah, it's like it's to a point to where it's just like, God, man. I've never seen a show marketed this way, where like the show is more about the person who made it than it is about the show.
And the thing is, I think Tony did that by design.
Oh yeah. Because like who the fuck knew Tony Gilroy before?
Not me.
This like people had, it's like, oh, like you look up his IMDb, is like, oh yeah, he made that like Bourne movie that everybody hated, or he made that George Clooney movie that everybody forgot about immediately after it came out.
Bro, I mean,
and then now he's like, I'm gonna do something and it's gonna be all about me.
You got to think. I mean,
crazy.
Unless you're like a writer director or a writer actor, you almost never hear about the writers of movies, big or bad. So you're right. I mean, Tony, I didn't know who the fuck he was, even when they're like, oh yeah, Tony Gilroy's coming in to work on Rogue One. I'm like, who the fuck is that and why do we need him?
Like, okay.
But clearly we did. And he's letting us know repeatedly many years down the line, what over 5 years, right? No.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Rogue One came out in 2016.
Yeah, so we're about to be 6 years removed from it, yet the one thing we all remember about Rogue One is A, lot of people consider it to be the best Disney Star Wars, and B, Tony fucking Gilroy is the reason why it's the best Disney Star Wars property. So
Dude, I want to know what Gareth Edwards, like, I want to sit down with an interview
he
for
has
Gareth
to
Edwards
fucking
and be
hate
like, hey,
Tony's
man,
guts, right? He has to hate his guts.
He's got to, because like, here's the one thing that we like, I remember when we went back and like, we did our podcast after seeing it, like one of the big things other than the ending that I think that we harped on a lot was like, that was visually the best Star Wars movie that may have ever been made, even to this day, like including the three that came after it. Yeah. And like that part gets completely glossed over because everybody only focuses on Tony Gilroy.
You are right. It has some of the best visual aesthetics in Star Wars. I mean, even when he just pans in on a new planet, like I bet all of us, if I say Jeddah, you're going to get that shot in your mind that he presents and the humming right away. Like he imprinted, and I would think that was Gareth, or at least his director of cinematography, something. Not Tony. I mean, Tony, honestly, I really think his big claim to fame is the end and
Vader hallways.
And Vader, which,
hey,
all credit, man. I mean,
yeah, great stuff for sure. But like, that movie was made by Gareth Edwards, and you like retweaked the end. Like,
I feel like if someone on this press junket was like, "Hey Diego, so Tony this, Tony that, what do you think about Gareth Edwards?" I feel like if he even opened his mouth, someone from off camera would assassinate him. Tony has
hit in the face.
Yeah, Tony has hitmen out to make sure that no one says anything positive about their time on Rogue One when Gareth was the main creator filmmaker. But all right, well,
it's just weird.
So there you go. That's our update. Tony is still the fucking man. He's so much the man that his cast members now have to essentially give his interview during their interviews, which is a thing of beauty.
Talk about him.
Here's the
unendingly.
And now even the entertainment media is failing us, where they can't just move on from a strong personality. Like just ask Diego a fucking question about Diego. It's not that hard, right? Okay.
Okay. So anyway, this is the question that kicked it off. It says, Tony Gilroy has said in the past that his superpower is not being a lifelong Star Wars fan, as that has allowed him to make bold choices on Rogue One. And I feel like that lack of fear on Andor as well. Could you also sense that he was unafraid to tell a new type of Star Wars
I closed that
story?
I thought we were done with that topic. So.
Okay, yeah. And then Diego just goes on to say that, I admire this guy so much. He experienced freedom in a very rigorous way, which I love. It's very interesting to have a voice like his in this story. You never approach a story this way, where you know what the end is, and the creative team doesn't have to deliver an ending that you're not expecting.
I'm waiting for him to click his heels and do a Heil Hitler at the end of this to Tony Gilroy. I mean, do you hear that?
Tony.
I mean, it's like
it's so crazy.
It's almost like he's in a cult now. Like he's in the Tony Gilroy cult, or like I said, he's kind of in on the joke, and like him and the journalists are just sitting there like, let's just fucking make this all about Tony, because that's all Tony does anytime he sits down with the media.
But the last two questions are very short. They essentially ask him, what do you think of Tony's plan for season 2, as every 3 episodes will represent a year's worth of story? Tony's plan. He says, I think it's perfect. It's lovely. It's almost like 4 different movies via 3 episode blocks. 3 episodes will be a very strong block to explore a year, another year, and then another year, and another year. Wow. Did he really speak that sentence? There's also space in between each block where time passes, so we're allowed to evolve and transform. But I think it's part of season 1 too. And then they ask how many episodes that the THR crew has seen. The THR people said the first 4. He said, so when you see episode 3, you probably went, I think I know the characters, the tone, and what the series is going to be about. But then we take you where episode 4 goes. And you were like, what? Where are we going? What's going on? What happened? Blah, blah, blah. So they were just talking about the rest of the 3 episode per year system that Tony invented for Andor specifically, against the wishes of everybody at Lucasfilm.
They are going to...
He has essentially made this series. You have to understand that he captured Kathleen Kennedy. He captured Dave Filoni. locked them in a cell, handcuffed, and refused to feed them until they allowed him to make this show the way that he wanted to.
In fact, moving forward, they're going to call this type of shooting schedule where you cover a year in 3 episodes. They're going to call it the Tony effect. All right.
Yes,
the Tony,
the Gilroy method.
I like that's even better. Or just the Gilroy. Like they're going to go in and the director's going to be talking to the producer and the showrunner and be like, all right, so we got this, and this. We need to kind of move this character a few years into the future by the end of season 2. And someone around the table goes, I got it. Deploy the Gilroy effect. And they're like, oh my God, you fucking genius. I was like, like they're all going crazy. Like, oh, you just solved like peace on Earth. I mean, something that amazing will be solved with the Gilroy effect in a future Star Wars property. So be on the lookout. We love him. We'll never leave him. In his name we speak, Tony Gilroy. Zig Hail. All right, so we do have one more little Andor deal that popped up when Nick was returning here. And this one, I titled it, I essentially say, according to the cast, Andor could have also been called Mothma. And, I've been on this show as we're leading up to Andor talking about how the character of Mon Mothma is probably what I'm most excited for. So when I read this interview from Genevieve O'Reilly, who has played her since Revenge of the Sith, I was like, okay, good. It does sound like we are going to get an extremely heavy helping of Mon Mothma, so much so that the show literally could have been titled after her instead of Cassian. In fact, that comes from Diego himself, who early on said, she's Mon Mothma. You're going to learn just as much about her in season 1 as you are with Cassian. So she really is.
Elon Musk watch this.
Exactly.
Strong lady.
Can she beat people up though? I mean, she also has to be physically tough, I think. So anyways, it does us Mon Mothmers out there, us fanboys of the Mon. It sounds like we are going to get the payoff we're looking for. So the article goes into just talking with Genevieve O'Reilly, like I said, who's been playing the character since her 20s, first played her in Revenge of the Sith. Sadly, most of those ended up on the cutting room floor unless you watched the deleted scenes. She then went on to voice her in Star Wars Rebels and then obviously reprised her in Rogue One. And now we're going to get the most Mon Mothma we've ever gotten via Andor. So Genevieve sat down with Entertainment Weekly and kind of discussed this, like how fans finally, after all these years, are going to get a little more behind the senatorial robes, if you will. In fact, she even talks about taking those robes off and how we are going to see the lady, the wife of a husband, and what motivates her. So, where she's talking about the character and the development here. So she says, we really get to develop her as a character. And we get to learn about her not just as a senator, but as a woman. A woman, in fact. We learn what her life is like, what she has to wrestle with, what are the dangers to her life, what it costs to be her. Tony's writing, here we go. You always got to give praise to Lord Gilroy. Tony's writing is so intricate and so taut. It lives in this world of the spy genre, of a socio-political drama, and yet it's set within a Star Wars world. Remember, he's a genius.
Yes.
So it feels universal and intimate all at once. So that's her way of saying, we made a spy show with a Star Wars skin. So you got bamboozled, fanboys. Suck it. No, but
I will say that, I want to put this out there. I don't think that Andor is going to be bad. I think that Andor is going to be a great show.
Yeah, we just like having fun with Tony Gilroy. That's it.
Yeah, I've just never seen a show marketed so based on a person that 90% of people don't know.
It's hilarious. Tony's writing is so this and so that. They're so hyperbolic about him. It really does feel like in their contracts, like you have to say 10 nice things about Tony in any interview you do.
In every interview. I could understand it if it was George, or if it was somebody like Peter Jackson, or if it was one of these
even Dave Filoni, maybe
Martin Scorsese, people who are like these filmmakers who are transcendent above, like, you know, who have proven time and time and time again with their work that like they are just on another level.
Yeah.
But you're talking about a guy who has literally like who like says that he hates Star Wars.
Yeah.
And is the only reason that anybody knows his name is because of Star Wars. Like, it's just, it's I've never seen anything like it before.
I mean, I really had no clue who the dude was. And even when I looked at his credits, like you said, I mean, he's still just a writer. So you never really hear about writers unless they win an Oscar for the screenplay.
Writing, for writing, and he never has.
Yeah, but my goodness, here he is. I mean, Genevieve is speaking his praise. Wild. So you just do not know with
maybe this is it.
Maybe he gets his Gilroy, and I hope he does, because
where he gets his
I mean,
Emmy.
listen,
dude,
like, as much as we you know make fun of the guy and the situation and his narcissism, if he puts out this amazing thing that he's telling us that he has crafted, that's all the better for Star Wars world and fans, I would think. In fact, Tony may be the guy that a lot of Star Wars fans who hate Star Wars, he may be the ticket. You know, those fans that got all pissed off at Obi-Wan Kenobi because of volumes, or, you know, Empire didn't send enough TIE fighters. Maybe he's gonna scratch that itch that these, you know, the certain wing of the fandom wants, and I hope he does. But until we see Andor, we're gonna sit here and have fun with him, because he is one of the
only talking point of this show.
He is one of the most confident, arrogant, narcissistic people in Hollywood I have ever read about, and that's saying a lot, because that's what that whole industry is. You have to be a narcissist to be in that industry. You have to. True. You have to think that everything you do is better, and people need to see it. So we'll see. Like I said, we're just having fun here. Hopefully, there's no Gilroys that listen to the podcast. We love the guy. Actually, I think the confidence is something to be applauded. Hopefully, it pays off, though. That's the one thing you got to be careful about when you. They could end up, like Nick has said a few times, having a TLJ on their hands once the fans get to sink their fangs into it, if you will. So anyways, that is funny that even Genevieve is going right to Tony and how great he is. But Nick, I guess maybe it's this quote here. Yeah, here's the next quote. So O'Reilly went on the interview, and you know, and how she draws inspiration from the Return of the Jedi portrayal of Mon Mothma, and she was talking like, you know, that she's only in that one scene. She's only one of 4 women that speak in the first 3 Star Wars movies. Think about that. But Genevieve's like, I just felt the pain in this character, like the way she delivered the many Bothans, and really just kind of delivering that breakdown on what they need to do for the Battle of Endor. That's where she used to kind of guide her performance of the character. And so Genevieve is saying, you can see when Caroline does that scene, for me, there was always a pain at the heart of it. You could see that she was carrying a pain. And I was really curious about what that was. What has happened in this woman's life? What has it cost to be her? What are the sacrifices that she has had to make along the way to be that leader of the rebellion? And if you think about it, Nick, we don't know shit about her. But to reach her level, to want to reach her level within the Rebel Alliance, something pretty bogus has had to have happened to her or will happen to her. So my question to you, what do you think? Why do you think a character like Mon Mothma, who probably, if she wanted to, could live a great life under the Empire? I mean, she's already a senator. If she just plays the game, toes the line, goes on Fox News and defends Palpatine, she could have a great life, right? I mean, she could live like a queen, more or less, within the Empire. So I guess, what do you think drives her to ultimately becoming the face, the political face of the Rebel Alliance? Is it something personally that tragically happens to her? Or is she more like a Bail Organa, and you just feel like she was born as, you know, more of a liberal and lover of freedom?
Yeah, I think that there like I mean there are moments in history that like even in like real history, not just fake history, and by fake history I mean like history like Star Wars history, where like there is just like a clear demarcation point to where like, you know, things are running smoothly and things are happening the way that they should happen in like a very organized society or in like through democratic process. And then there is a clear line of demarcation where that changes. And there are those who really do like who really do just like they're on the forefront of it and they notice it right away. And I feel like that's what Mon Mothma's thing was. Like she just noticed the corruption immediately and she was like, we need to do something about this. Like we need to, you know, be prepared for the fallout that is going to come from this unprecedented reach for power that Palpatine made. And I feel like there are a lot of people who get caught up in like the fervor of what's happening, especially in Star Wars history where like it's wartime and like they're like it doesn't necessarily lend itself to evil that like there was this overreach for power, especially when there are thousands of Galactic Republic people dying every day because of the war from on the CIS side. But like there are people who can like see through the veneer. And I feel like she was just like one of those people who saw the erosion of democracy and of freedom happening in real time.
Right.
And she was just quick to be on it because at least as far as we know in canon so far, like there was nothing that happened to her.
Correct.
That would immediately say like, well, now I'm for sure going to be the face of the rebellion.
That's what I guess that's what I'm kind of getting at. But you raise good points because, I mean, let's be real. Bail Organa is cut from the same cloth as Mon Mothma. Because a lot of people are like, well, Bail, they blew up Alderaan. I'm like, no. They blew up Alderaan well after Bail was involved in the Rebel Alliance. Like, just like Nick said, right around the time of Revenge of the Sith, it's like the seven, I forget how many senators there were, but it was Mon Mothma, Padme, Bail, I think Herodian was in there, and a few others. And they all were kind of like, this guy is a bit unchecked at this point in time, so we need to kind of start talking amongst ourselves to try to hold on to any of this democratic government that we now have, because if we keep letting Palpatine go unchecked and these other systems just giving him powers left and right, we are going to get destroyed. A lot of freedoms. I mean, that line everyone brings up now because we're seeing it in America. You know, the Padme says, and this is how whatever dies to thunderous applause. I mean, you saw a lot of senators were like, yeah, fuck it, we'll go along with this ruse. But there were some, as Nick said, Mon Mothma, Bail, that's just like, they're just good people. They know what is right and what is wrong. And regardless if being wrong can line their pockets and give them more power, they're still going to do what is right. So I guess the other thing is, why does... If you think about Bail Organa, they kind of use him in the prequels to show a politician's disgust with the way politics are going. I mean, he's the one during Attack of the Clones, he's like punching the for whatever they're out on that walkway, seeing all the clones go off to war, and he's punching it, like essentially going like, fuck, we lost. Now I know where we're headed. We're going down this path that I wanted to avoid. So you always think that Bail was going to be the figurehead, but even by Rogue One, Mon Mothma is the fucking leader, and this is still before Alderaan is blasted, so we can't say, well, because Bail got blown up. So what makes her the fucking leader? What happens to her? Why does she become the number one? And it sounds like Andor might lead us there, hopefully.
Yeah. So I was looking at her wiki because, again, like, so apparently there is canonical like stuff out there about Mon Mothma being arrested and charged with conspiracy and treason because she was one of the delegation of 2000 who tried to limit the expansion of executive powers under Palpatine. So She was one of 63 senators that were arrested. And the only reason that she was released, and Bale was one of these people arrested too. The only reason that she was released is because she made a public statement claiming to be loyal to the Empire. This came from, again, like this came from Star Wars: The Rebel Files. I don't know what that is.
That's Tony's favorite place to go for canon. Remember, fan canon.
Yeah. So apparently, this is like a book that released in 2017, 2018. And so it is canon because it was released under Disney's development and ownership of Star Wars at that time. But like apparently, we all knew about the delegation. Like we had heard about the delegation of 2000 because that was discussed in a deleted scene in episode 3. But we did not know that. Well, at least I didn't know. Apparently, people who read this book did know, but I didn't know that there were actual arrests that happened because of that. So maybe like that's probably a reason why that she's kind of, all in on the rebellion right from the beginning, because she was arrested for trying to stop the expansion of executive powers to Palpatine during that time period. And then the only way that she could get out was to give a false declaration of fealty to the Empire, essentially. So,
I guess if you think about it, I mean, in the end, a lot of the rebel leaders, it's not like, because they were senators, they were well off. They were, I mean, let's be real. Bale was essentially a king. I mean, he lived in a fucking castle. So they were pretty well-to-do. I forgot the point I was going with here. I did have a point, but it is like been lost.
People like that don't typically put themselves in positions to where they could fall.
Yeah,
like if you are comfortable.
Exactly. So that's why I don't know. It's sometimes it's hard to think about why would a character like Bale or why would a character like Mon go to such lengths to do what is right when they know that they'll lose everything. And a lot of times we want to identify a tragedy that has happened to them to allow them to do that. So I think that's why I'm going like, well, did the Empire fucking shoot her dog, or is her husband going to get his throat slit in front of her because she doesn't do something? Is that the impetus, or is she kind of like Bail Organa? She's just one of these good fucking people down to her core, and is always going to fight for the little person and is always going to do what is right, even if it means losing her power, her position, her cash flow, you name it.
Yeah. I mean, it will be interesting to see how they, like, one, at what point they pick it up.
Yeah.
Like, at what point do they pick up after Revenge of the Sith? Do we see her arrest? And is that what is the ultimate spurring moment into her becoming?
I think, outside of maybe a quick flashback to show his home planet getting wiped out, I think they're running with season 1 is 5 years before Rogue One. So, the Empire's truly peaking. It is pretty much.
So by that timeline, she would have been arrested and released.
More than likely, yeah. At the time we're coming into Andor, like we've said, the Senate it's a fucking sham for the most part. Like that's what I want to see if they even fill up the rotunda anymore. If people even come in for votes, or if it's just so bullshit now that only the serious people show up just because they're serious, and they're like they have to see for themselves like how farcical the Senate has become. The last little thing Genevieve had to say, and again, it's just teasing. We're going to get more than just the white robe. We're finally going to see how Mon Mothma uses her other skills beyond, again, being a figurehead. And I do think, Nick, through the trailer and the fact that she meets with the Luthen character, she's going to be doing some shady shit as a very important person. And, maybe that's how she gains credibility within the Rebel Alliance. And maybe that's why she becomes the figurehead, because she was one of the first prominent Senate members to be like, you know what? We need to start getting down and dirty. We need to start recruiting some shady fucking people. We need the Luthans out there scouting the galaxy for supplies, ships, weapons, everything. And she's kind of using some of the powers of her office to assist in that. But she's telling us, we're going to see her as we've seen her talking to senators, but we're going to see her at home talking with her husband. We're going to get Mon Mothma public version and private version. Every one of you knows you have two versions of yourself. And if you don't, you're lying. Every one of us has a mask, I like to say, that we put on. And that mask usually comes on in public. It could be at public events. It could be at parties. But a lot of times, a lot of us have to put a mask on at work, because if we didn't, we'd probably lose our jobs. Me in particular. Like, if I went into work the way I am, I probably wouldn't last too long, even with tenure. So I wear a mask, and that mask it's pretty loose. It's hanging off, trust me. Like, I let a lot of personality into my work, but every one of us has our true self and then a public facing. So I'm interested to see, who is this true Mon Mothma? Is she vulnerable? She never looks vulnerable in her Senate gown or in her whites, her rebel whites. So what is she like in private? Genevieve just says, like, you're going to get to see her literally and figuratively take off her cloak and reveal herself as a woman in a way we've never seen before. Don't get me excited, Genevieve. That is kind of titillating right there, if you know what I'm saying. So hopefully she's talking about maybe she's going to do a little bit of a striptease for her husband. But I don't think that's what she meant. So in all seriousness, I've been saying it since day one. I think Mon Mothma is going to be the sleeper hit of the show, and at least the narratives revolving around her character. Maybe not for everyone, but lore geeks like myself, I think some of the juiciest content is going to revolve around Mon Mothma and what she's up to as she and others are putting together the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm excited to see her journey for sure.
So how we doing here? Not too bad. So we're not going to do Matt Mando game today, but we are going to do our special topic. So special topic here. We're staying with soon-to-be-released Star Wars properties. Last 2 weeks, we've ran special topics. First week, we did, what we'd like to see narratively in Andor, and then we pivoted to what are some of the legacy characters or known characters we'd like to see. So, hey, we're going to do something similar to Bad Batch, because it's still coming out September 28th, whether Disney wants to make it official or not. Maybe we'll get some news Thursday of this week, which is, I think that's Disney Plus Day. But so far, from what I've been seeing, it has stayed on the schedule for September 28th. So this week, our little special topic is going to be 5 things that Matt and Nick, which may end up being 10 things that Matt and Nick would like to see in Bad Batch Season 2. So because I am a good host, Nick, why don't you go ahead and start with one of your picks?
So for me, Bad Batch Season 2 is obviously going to be, like, my main focus is on Crosshair's story. So, like, seeing what the resolution of, because I say resolution because I don't think that you can continue to stretch out the Crosshair storyline too much longer. Like, it's already kind of like by the end of season 1, and his like his allegiance to the now Empire is already starting to kind of wane.
Yep.
So for me, I want to see, like, the resolution of his storyline, whether it be by death or by, I guess you would call it, dishonor to the Empire, and then switch back to his friends and stuff. So first up for me is definitely, like, I'll call it like a relatively quick resolution to the Crosshair storyline, one way or the other.
It's funny you mentioned that, Nick, because that was going to be one of mine. In my head, it was like, can we resolve the Crosshair thing by the end of season 2? And the Crosshair thing is exactly what Nick is saying. I do feel like if we return to this whole, Crosshairs with the Empire, but is he? And he's only with the Empire because he's got a hard on for Clone Force 99 and taking them out. We've been there, done that. I mean, so much so that he helped them escape certain death, yet he still is like, no, good soldier follow order. It's like, okay. So I'm with you, man. Like, how much longer can we continue that? Unfortunately, I think they drag it out the entire season, but I do think they resolve it going into hopefully a season 3. But I was right with you. Like we were thinking the same on that one. All right.
Yeah.
My first one here is I want a deeper dive, or at least another episode dedicated to the whole Alpha and Omega theme between Boba and Omega. I don't think you can just casually bring that up in season 1 and literally have text say Alpha and Omega. I mean, come on. They are fucking twins of Jango Fett. I mean, we have Jango Fett with a wiener and Jango Fett with a vagina.
Mm-hmm.
That is the Alpha and Omega. So I want them to add another layer to that. It could be as simple as running into Boba Fett and letting her know, like, hey, that's technically your twin brother. We know right now he's kind of a fuck up, but you guys literally have the same DNA, skill sets. He is kind of a badass, even though he's a bit of a teenage punk at this point in time. I mean, come on. You don't introduce that concept without additional payoffs. So much so, I think at some point it could bleed into live action Boba Fett played by Tim Morrison.
I agree.
Especially his whole thing with family with the Tuskens, like they've teed it up. Boba, you've got a fucking family member out there. Go find her in season 2, pal. But let's kind of lay the groundwork for that in Bad Batch.
Yeah, for sure. And my next one, I'll kind of spin off of that too, because it's kind of Omega focused, and it's not really about her link to Boba, but like her maturation process. Because towards the end of season 1, like throughout the majority of season 1, Clone Force 99 looked at her as like, okay, we just need to protect her. Like she is our cause to protect. But now, especially towards the end of it, after the season or after the episode where we saw her essentially save Hunter's life, like I feel like the perception around Omega and what she can do for the team has changed a lot. So like I want to see like more building on that, like more of her maturation process, more showing her as like another member of the team and not just like, okay, we like Omega's here and it's us. We're protecting Omega. Omega, you stay in the ship while we go do what we're going to do. And then, she's not going to stay on the ship. Hijinks occur and stuff like that. Like I want to see her become an active participant in Clone Force 99. Show her. Do we know yet, like if there is going to be a time jump, or if we are picking up like basically right where we left off?
The duration has not been given, but there is a slight time jump for sure. I mean, I have a graphic up, Nick, where you can see their new armor. I know it's just been painted, so they could have done that in a week, but Omega is significantly taller and looks slightly different. Like you can tell it's very similar to how they aged Boba in the Clone Wars, where they started off he was like little tiny Daniel Logan Boba, but by season 2 or 3 he was a little lengthier, kind of going through his growth spurt, and I think that's what they've done for Omega. It's definitely not going to be a direct follow-up, so I would say at least a year has gone by. I think we can be safe in saying that. But it might even be longer than that. In
that case, I definitely want to see a heavy focus on like how she's changed and what role she has taken within the group now. Because that's also going to change the dynamic with Crosshair. Like if we do get a resolution with the Crosshair story that is not just him dying, then you're going to have to work with that kind of new team dynamic, because it's not the same team that you were a part of when you left. So that's one thing that I'm very interested to see is
I think you're spot on, and I do think they're going to pay off on that. Because in the trailer, she no longer felt like their ward; she felt like their teammate, part of the family. She's even wearing armor now that matches their new paint scheme. So. I think you will get that wish. All right, my next one here is, let's get a little more inside Mount Tantus. That's that mountain we see at the very end on Wayland, where they brought what's her name, Nala Se, and from other, I guess not canon anymore, but this mountain was where a lot of weird cloning shit was going on during Heir to the Empire type of stuff. So one would have to think that Dave and company are going to be using it for similar purposes. And we do know, I mean, they've slowly been doing it in the Mandoverse, and I think they even teased it in Bad Batch Season 1. They are going to use programs like the Bad Batch and the Mandoverse to give us some backstory to flesh out more of the happenings that have already taken place by the time we get to the sequel trilogy. So, you know, let's get into Mount Tantus. Is Thrawn involved at this point in time or not? Or have they completely shifted from what that mountain's use was in Heir to the Empire? Is it now more relegated to Palpatine, dark side cloning experiments, stuff like that? So hopefully we get a peek inside the mountain, and specifically, are we getting closer to kind of understanding what the Empire wanted with Nala Se, considering that by the end of Bad Batch Season 1, what'd they do? They blew up the Kaminoan facilities and essentially said, we don't need you people anymore because your clones are too expensive, and we just took your best scientists. So, see ya.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. And I mean, this may be semi-related, but I think that this one's probably the biggest swing and most likely not to happen. But I want to see if we can get like a Grogu check-in in Season 2, because up to this point, in terms of like Grogu's history, we know that he was an active member of the Jedi Order in some capacity. Like, I mean, granted, as a child, like as a baby, during the time of the fall of the Republic. Like, we know that he was in the Jedi Temple. We know that he somehow got out. And we know that from that point, he essentially, we assume that he kind of bounces around until he falls into the hands of Din in the beginning of The Mandalorian. So, like, is there any possible way that, like, the Clone Force 99, the Bad Batch, can, like, intersect with Grogu on, like, this really weird journey that he's on right now? Like, is there somebody out there that knows about him? We know that Ahsoka knows that Grogu is out there because she has met him. So there's like, do they get a mission from Fulcrum to be like, hey, you guys are looking for a Jedi, but it's a very special Jedi, and essentially sends them on a mission to try to find Grogu? Like, is that a possibility for Season 2, or is that a bit of a reach, do you think? I'll go ahead and kick off my next one, because I think it matches or butts up to what you're saying. So first things first, we know that they definitely don't rescue him from the temple, because they were off planet when Order 66 kicked off. I mean, they were there. They got to see what Order 66 did, and that's, you know, where Crosshair started going funky. So we know that they don't grab him from the temple. But I'm with you, Nick. I do think they could be involved in some capacity in his journeys in between the fall of the Republic and him popping up many years later in the fucking shed of what seemed to be some sort of criminal hangout, right? I mean, it was just a bunch of like fucking Niktos and shit hanging out in like a bunker that had a baby enclosed in a bassinet, like a futuristic bassinet. So, so one of my wants kind of butts up to this in the way I envision how they could get involved. And I'm saying, why not get the Bad Batch mixed up with the Path? Okay? Like a Roken. Could we see the Bad Batch interacting with Roken? With Tala at this point in time? Has she made the decision to be a spy? Could, you know, if we get mixed up in the Path, that's kind of the Grogu angle. Maybe they're not doing a job to save Grogu, but maybe they hear about, like, hey, we've got this, it looks like a baby thing. He's like this green thing. He looks like nothing else except for that one Jedi Master that we used to hear about. But I could see the Path. And again, the Path is not the Rebel Alliance. The Path was specifically to save Force sensitives from Order 66 and the Inquisitors.
But why not? If you're a Path, you're probably interacting maybe with some of the early Rebel cells to gain intel. Why not hire a group like Clone Force 99 to do a job for you, even if it's to just be security or protection? And through that, Nick, maybe you hear about like, well, this one child keeps getting away, or we can't find this one powerful child that we know we need to get, but we can't, and blah, blah, blah. So I don't directly think the Bad Batch is going to interact with Grogu, but I can see like a kind of like a tangentially attached story that us as fans will know about who the people are talking about, where the Bad Batch might not exactly know that, oh, they're talking about this guy that, for all we know, could become one of the most powerful Jedi Mandalorians in all of Star Wars when it's all said and done.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good call. I do. Yeah. Like now that I think about it, like them directly interacting with Grogu is highly unlikely to happen, because like if you're a member of the early seeds of the rebellion, like at this point during season 2,
they're a lightning rod, man. They're a lightning rod.
Yeah. Are you going to trust a bunch of clones? No, just no fucking way that's going to happen. So I think that's a good call.
Because think about it. I mean, Crosshair still knows about them. Rampart still knows about them. So they know that the Bad Batch, they're probably on wanted posters, where early people starting the rebellion, no one knows about them yet. Like, you could argue they've forgotten about Captain Rex at this point in time. You know, most people probably think he died during the Clone Wars. They're like, hey, whatever. That's why Rex is allowed to operate throughout this entire time period with Ahsoka behind the scenes helping to build up the Rebel Alliance. Now, why does Rex end up, before the job's done, retiring to a desert planet with 2 of his old overweight clone buddies? I don't know, but the Bad Batch doesn't have the ability to just kind of be nobodies at this point in time. They're known entities, and they probably are being constantly hunted by the Empire thanks to Crosshair.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, probably not the best crew to send after a highly prized Jedi baby that you want to take care of. All right, so my next one is actually kind of related to what we were just talking about in Andor, and like I didn't want to draw too many like crossover threads between Andor and Bad Batch, even though they're essentially functioning in almost the same time period. Like, you know, they're very close to each other, and they're dealing with very similar things, like the formation of the rebellion, the ongoing like push against the Imperial vice grip that's tightening against the galaxy. Like, both of these shows are kind of dealing with these same themes, but like one person that could easily intersect into both of those realms is Mon Mothma. I mean, Mon Mothma is, one, we know an Imperial senator, but we also know is the burgeoning head of the rebellion. And given the level of interaction that the Bad Batch has already had with people who are instrumental in the formation of rebel cells, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we could get Genevieve O'Reilly voicing a cartoon version of Mon Mothma.
She's done it in Star Wars Rebels, so you know she's not averse to it. I mean, some of the mains don't want to voice their characters in animated, some do. Yeah. And she is one.
She's not that.
Yeah, no. I mean, totally, because we don't know the time jump between season 1 and season 2, but I still think we're going to be at best 3 to 4 years post the fall of the Republic. Probably closer to 3 years. So shit's still sketchy. The Empire's still ascending. They're still trying to flex their muscle without making themselves look like a fascist regime, right? They're still selling that we're doing this for security and all that bullshit. A Mon Mothma during this time is going to be different than a Mon Mothma during the Kenobi timeline. Going to be different during the Andor timeline. You know, she's going to have years to kind of realize, like, holy shit, what did we get ourselves into? I mean, even 2 or 3 years in, I'm sure someone like Mon and Bale, they're going like, oh fuck, I see the writing on the wall. Like, it's only a matter of time before there's no freedom left in this galaxy. But they're still probably holding on hope that they can still pull the old levers of the Republic and try to contain this emperor and this empire a bit. But by the Kenobi timeline, you could already tell Bail's starting to realize, like, this is a sham. I'm participating in a sham, and we need to start doing things kind of under the radar to cut the head off of this fucking thing, or we're all fucked at a certain point in time.
Exactly. So
okay.
Yeah, I mean that whole interaction is going to be interesting. So what's your last one?
Well, I have two more because I think we were cutting them all over the place. All right. So, but one's just real quick, and this is more of like a visual thing. But I want to start seeing the intermixing of TK and clone units, because by the end of the Bad Batch, their main force was still the clones. I know we went to that planet where commandos were training TKs, but I want to see like 2-3 years after the fall of the Republic, are they mixed battalions, or did the Empire literally just go, okay, that's enough of the clones, you're all dead? Or was it more of like a phased in approach? Because I believe in Andor, in some of the trailers, we still saw clones being used. Now, were these clones still working for the Empire? Were they working for a rebel cell? Are they rebels that just had clone armor? Who knows? But you would think at this point in time, Bad Batch Season 2, that the Empire is starting to roll out their cheaper, more affordable, easier,
less trained,
less trained, less skilled, but easier to build up and just slap you on a battlefield force in the TKs, aka the Stormtroopers. So
yes,
let's get those guys mixed together. I would like to see a mixed unit of clones and TKs to kind of see, is it like how it went with Crosshairs on his first venture, where he's shooting some of the regular TKs, because they aren't robotic and as skilled, or is there like some disdain in there where the TKs are starting to outnumber the clones and kind of looking at them as lesser beings because they are clones and they were just tools. They're not really supposed to be real people. I think you can have some interesting stories with those two factions of white armor wearing warriors.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even getting to see like the conscription process, like how are they getting these people? Are they literally just like landing on planets and fucking rounding people up?
Is it volunteer? It seemed volunteer during Bad Batch Season 1. Like the few TKs were like, hey, or the ones that were in the clone special unit with Crosshair, they're like, we're ready to do this shit, blah, blah. Or like Nick said, has it become probably what Russia is like right now, where every week if you're a male, you got to worry if someone's going to come to your neighborhood and fucking throw you into an army truck. So
yeah, exactly.
All right, and
that's a good one.
You went through your 5 because we kind of.
Yeah, I got.
You got one more, and then I got one. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I got one more. So my one more is Death Star, baby. Like, where are we at? Do we get to see anything on the Death Star? I mean, because right now, we saw at the end of ROTS, like, construction is underway.
Yeah, they had the scaffolding out, if anything, by the end of ROTS.
Yeah. So are we going to get, like, is this series going to be used as like a check-in on the Death Star progress and stuff like that? Or are they going to leave that for, Andor? Right. Are they going to leave that for other series and stuff like that? Because even within Rebels, like, you don't really like get to see that much of the Death Star.
Not at all. I think... Does it even get mentioned? I don't even think it gets referred to as a Death Star. It might get mentioned as like the other project competing for Thrawn's dollars and time.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is like the only time that we really got to see it or really heard of it prior was because Thrawn was actively like lobbying against it. During the Rebels
he wanted the fucking resources that were being sucked up to the Death Star. He wanted it for the Defender. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. I would like that. I mean, that scratches my lore prequel type of OCDs. Like, all right, let's get a stage build. Does it look like Death Star 2 at this point in time? As a kid, I always like Death Star 2. Like, always amazed me because it looked like a face to me. It looked like a person, right? You had the nose coming out. You had the eye there, the disc. And wasn't Death Star 2 technically bigger than Death Star 1? I think. Like if they actually finished it would have been a little bit bigger.
Yeah, there was no way, given how both Death Stars were presented to us, that you could actually know that it was bigger because it was just a big ball in space with no reference point around it.
Exactly.
So like, but it technically was larger than the next one. Okay. So their idea was let's not do ships. Let's make a big ball. When that one fails, just make a bigger ball. And that's
and then when that one failed,
work, right?
40 years down the road, they're like, let's make a really big fucking ball. In fact, let's just take a goddamn planet this time, core it out, and turn it into a fucking shooting laser.
Because when you take a planet, you don't have to build the outside of it.
Right.
The outside's already done. All you gotta do is just put the shit on the inside.
There are no exhaust ports in planets, so you can't blow it up with just a proton torpedo hit, or can you? I think Poe had something to say about that. So
exactly. That was my fifth one. Was like, do we get a Death Star check?
I could definitely get down with some Death Star builds, right? You know, do a little Clerks thing. Maybe check in on the plumbers or
on the plumbers.
Yeah, the electrician union, what they're up to.
Dude, I could see that happening as like a comedic scene where like one of the contracted plumbers comes up and be like, man, we need more PVC pipe. We don't have enough. Like, we need, like, if you want toilets on every level, we need the materials.
This fucking Palpatine guy, he wants those solo toilets on every fucking floor. We gotta have multiple water runs there because they're shooting it up their ass. They gotta flush it. Yeah, so I could get down with that. All right, my last one, it's a slight cheat towards if we do a special topic next week on legacy characters we'd like to see. So kind of take it under the guise of more of I want to see the mission versus the character that the mission could net. So I want to see the mission to save Wolf, right? We got the mission last year to save Gregor. So are they going to do something similar in season 2 and show us how Wolf makes it back to the fold? Because you kind of have to. Those were the two named clones, even more so than Cody because of what happened in Star Wars Rebels. You had to account for them in some form or fashion. And the fact that they've already done it with Gregor, it just kind of sets it up to, all right, you gotta rescue the third of the old clone trio that we came to meet and love again in Star Wars Rebels, and that would be Wolf. You know, is he in another facility like Gregor was, or is he going to be kind of like Cody, where his chip did go off, but like Hauser, he's already starting to question things like, what am I doing? Why are we doing this? Because I think that's the angle they're taking with Cody, at least based on what we've been teased with, where Cody's working with Crosshair, but he's also going like, dude, is this really what we should be doing? Is this why we were created? Is this what we used to do? Is this how we used to act? So, yeah, the mission. Maybe I'll save Wolf for a character and cheat, like I said, for next week. So there you go. Those are Matt and Nick's, a.k.a. the Star Wars Time Shows Once for plot points in Bad Batch Season 2. All right, so that takes us to this week's version of the SWTS fan segment. That's right, you heard me correctly. We're the only Star Wars fan podcast that dedicates a segment every week to its fans. So the first way to get mixed up in the Star Wars Time Show fan segment is our question of the week. I pose the question every Tuesday on our Instagram account at Star Wars Time Show. So look for it in our stories as well as the posts. Leave a comment, and if there's only 2 of you to leave a comment, guess what? You're going to make the show. If there's 5 of you that leave a comment, you're going to make the show. If there's 6 of you, 1 of you is not going to make the show. So please try to leave comments so we have some to choose from, and Nick just doesn't do the old screen grab. So let's get into it, Nick. And also, I have to announce, some longtime fans will be excited about this announcement because it's been, I think, well over a year since this has happened during a live. I've got to piss my fucking brains out. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off the question real quick for Nick to start reading. I'm going to run to the little boys' room and let this thing loose because it is starting to come out my eyes. So hold on, let me get the screen. There we go. So go ahead, Nick, kick it off, and then I'll switch to the first question. And while you're reading the first response, I'm going to be taking a leak.
There we go. Okay, so the question of the week is, who is more than likely going to appear in Andor, Palpatine, Vader, or Thrawn, and
Okay,
why?
and I'll open up your first one and maybe riff on it for a second while I'm taking a leak. Ready, go!
Yes, go. All right, so the first one is a Star Wars Toy Story. He says, I know it's a non-answer, but I feel like Palpatine is the least likely. I'm torn between Thrawn and Vader. I feel like Ian McDiarmid was around for filming for like 5 minutes for his hologram appearance, if he was on set at all. Thrawn and Vader were possibly filming a lot contemporaneously to the Andor shooting. Vader feels unnecessary, so I'm going to say Thrawn. I'm going to hope for Thrawn. I mean, yeah, I think the reason that Matt posed this question is because, like, there are a lot of people who could actually fall into this show pretty easily. Especially given, like you were saying, or like a Star Wars Toy Story was saying, like a lot of filming was happening with these characters anyway. So, yeah, I mean, Thrawn is a solid answer, but all of them, I think, are possibilities. So yes, there we go.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I honestly, I know the question was kind of weak this week. I'll be the first one to admit it. I was really struggling because we had 0 topics. I didn't even figure out our special topic before I posed the question, or I would have made it Bad Batch base. But Nick is correct. All 3 of these characters could clearly be in Andor. But is there a reason for them to be there, and will they make it better? That's kind of where I was getting, and it sounds like a Star Wars Toy Story got the prompt. So good reply there. All right, next one.
Good stuff there. Next one is Redneck Nerd 2004. He says Thrawn, because Disney has been hinting at his return since Mando season 2, and this will be a perfect time to introduce him to new fans and explore his motives. I tend to agree with that response. There's been a lot of like small teases towards Thrawn.
My question is, do you think the 2004 marks the date Redneck Nerd 2004 became a redneck, a nerd,
or when he was born?
He became a redneck nerd?
I mean, at this point, too, it's not even outside of the realm of possibility to say that that's the year he was born, because that would make him 18. Right. So it may be the year he was born. And
it's a good profile pick for Redneck Nerd. We got an AR-15 on there, so looking good. All right. Thank you, Redneck Nerd. We speak your name.
Yes. Thank you so much. All right. Next up is Luca Gerasimenko. He says, I think Vader and maybe Palpy. Like, seriously, there is no Star Wars without a glimpse of Vader, even for a sec, even if it's a flashback. Like, there is always Vader.
He's not.
I mean, he's
kind of not wrong. And it makes sense considering the maker has said that Star Wars is the story of Anakin Skywalker. So, but he is right. You can kind of plug Vader in anywhere, and he's going to get a reaction, even if he's just standing there with his arms crossed. So,
yeah. Dude, I don't know. And I feel like I'm going to go back to the god himself, Tony Gilroy. I mean, Gilroy made his Star Wars bones on not being afraid to use Vader.
Yeah, in a way that no one had ever used Vader before. I mean, he's the first one. It's like, all right, not that he would look at Star Wars comic books, but he was like, all right, I know what I would like if I was a Star Wars fan, and it's this big hulking machine man fucking people up. And he was right. He was right. It's still like the best 45 seconds in Star Wars, in my opinion. All right.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe he does go back to the well. Maybe he is unafraid to use Vader even in this show, because he knows people.
We know Tony's mantra on legacy characters. As long as it's not a cynical cameo, he'll do it. So I guess if he's figured out some sort of masterful narrative, but he'll bring him in.
If Tony's gonna do it, it's not cynical. Of course. Anything that Tony does is not cynical.
Purpose. It's purposeful. Yeah,
it is well thought out, executed, and perfectly written. So
I mean, I guess we'll get through them all. And I'll see which character you would have picked. So let's go to the next one here.
Yeah. Next up says Super Zoom Photography says Palpatine, because somehow Palpatine returns.
He always does. I like that one.
He always returns. And then the last one there. The last one, I just added this one in because I realized we didn't have 5. This is from 2797 Studios. He says, gotta be Palpy and Vader. I think it's too early in the timeline to see Thrawn, for season 1 at least. I think if anything, you'll see Palpy in Senate situations, and I'll say Vader in videos or images. Maybe we'll even get to see Palpy's speech for Empire Day 2 in live action. That'd be cool.
Well, we saw the first ever Empire Day speech in live action. That's what he's giving in the Senate. That's the one that was broadcast out to Camino in Bad Batch season 1. So I'm guessing Bat's saying like actual have an Empire Day, and like him giving a talk, which would be interesting. I honestly and we saw an Empire Day thing in Rebels, right in the beginning. Yes.
But that wasn't Palpatine.
That's what I mean. Like he literally, like at this point in time, especially by the Andor timeline, Palpatine's so far removed from giving a fuck about people that all he's doing is hanging out, plotting how he can mess with Darth Vader to make Vader angry and strong, and ultimately these days we have to think he's plotting his immortality. Like that's what Palpatine cares about at this point in time. He cares about ensuring that Vader doesn't turn on him and stays angry, and keeping himself alive beyond death. Really, he's already he's got the galaxy by the balls. So as much as I want to see Palpatine at a Senate session, I don't think he probably has touched the Senate since that moment in Revenge of the Sith. I think he lets Masa Amida and what's her name? She ends up turning on him there, the bald-headed one. Damn it! Yeah, it's not C.O. Bibble. That's the dude from Naboo.
No, they think it's fucking his. Like they think that she was like banging Palpatine.
What's her name? Moore. Her last name's Moore. Sly Moore. There you go, Sly Moore. Yeah.
Sly Moore. I was gonna say Sky. But
you can almost take this to the bank. We are getting a Senate scene, or at least a glimpse of it, because we've seen it in stills and whatnot, and we're still talking Andor here. I think at best you get Masa Amida and Sly in the center of the Senate chamber, and maybe a call-in from the guy. But like I said, I think he's so far removed from giving a fuck about the fake Senate that he just lets the underlings play in that sandbox these days.
Yeah. As for my thoughts, I think the least likely that we're going to see is probably Palpatine. And the most likely, I mean, and maybe this is just me being like I don't want to say a homer, but like wanting to actually see this fucking happen. Like, I think it's Thrawn, because this is Thrawn's time. Like, this is when he is at the height of his power. In terms of like not only his influence within the Imperial superstructure and specifically the Imperial Navy, but like just as a character overall in Star Wars. Like this is before his downfall due to his run-ins with Phoenix Squadron. This is before he even really starts to mess with Phoenix Squadron all that much. Like this is when he is at like his most influential. So I think that like, and then like, we know he's coming eventually. Like one of our respondents said, like Thrawn, the redneck nerd, they've been hinting, like this is the time to bring him in and then use this as a juxtaposition to where he's going to be in Ahsoka. I think that these two series play off of each other very heavily, even though they're separated by a lot of time. So I think that this is the moment that you really start to bring Thrawn to prominence.
All right. So Vader, I feel like it's too soon. We got a nice dose of Vader through the Kenobi series. And I know this makes no sense from a narrative standpoint, but I feel like it's all right. Put him back in the toolbox for a little bit. Like he got to play with us. It was fun. We got some kick-ass moments of him in action. Don't worry that the speech from Anakin to Obi-Wan, that was all fucking fantastic Vader content. So I do feel like breaking him out again in any sort of meaningful capacity is too much. And he's not needed for this story. Yeah. He's not needed for this story. I mean, he really wasn't even needed for Rogue One. It was just great to see him. And because it butts directly up to A New Hope, it was nice to kind of give that tie-in. Like, look, the dude really was chasing these fuckers down from a battle when we meet him in A New Hope. So you don't need Vader in Andor. Palpatine, you definitely could make an argument for him showing up, but I still, like I said, at this point in time, he is an emperor that doesn't have to focus on the day-to-day nonsense of running a government. There is no government. Mm-hmm. He is the government. So he doesn't need to be at a Senate session to get what he needs done. He'll use his mouthpieces.
Well, also just think about, I mean, I know that not all of our listeners are American. We have a lot of people in the UK. We have a lot of people elsewhere. But like, just think about like your regular senatorial hearings that happen in your country. Like Joe Biden's not sitting in the Senate chambers whenever they have a fucking meeting.
Right.
Like that's why the vice president is there. Like Kamala Harris is the president of the Senate essentially. And like, even like House congressional meetings and stuff like that, like the president doesn't go to those things. Like he has representatives there that do those things for him. So it's likely the same situation for Palpatine as well. Like he just has representatives that take care of his interests and stuff like that.
Now, I mean, I wouldn't be upset if they're walking through a city street and there's like a Palpatine hologram going off that this is on replay, like, hey, the Empire's here for your safety and security, that type of shit. But I don't think he needs to be involved in any capacity. Same with Vader. So I'm with you, man, on Thrawn, and kind of for the same reasons. A big one being, if you know, and I don't know dick about Thrawn outside of what's been presented in cartoons, okay? So I'm a Thrawn dope. But I know enough to make some educated speculations. And if you think about it, Rogue One, it's all about taking it to the last fucking minute to figure out what the Empire's been talking about for years in its secret communiques about this weapon that should help finally squash any rebellion. So Andor is naturally also the Death Star without it being spoken as the Death Star. It's going to play a major role in Andor. It has to. It has to. Yeah, because that's what the Rebel Alliance is going to be focused on even back then. Because you got to think about it. The Death Star has been in construction, like Nick said, since Revenge of the Sith. So people talk, people get killed for talking, but shit still gets out. So at this point in time, you have to think that they're like, well, you should see what the Empire's up to in this facility and this secret thing here. They're conscripting engineers to work on something special. Did you hear what happened to Urso? So it's a big hubbub at this point in the Star Wars timeline. So if we think about Thrawn and what he was trying to do for the Empire to turn the tide against any rebel cells was his TIE Defender program. So it makes perfect sense to bring in a character like Thrawn who has a competing interest to characters that are supporting the Death Star during this time period. So you could check that box, like, all right, Thrawn makes sense for this story because he was indirectly involved in talks about the Death Star because he didn't want it to happen. So that would be great to bring him in for that. And then B is, as we've all been saying, we know Thrawn's coming back thanks to The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. So why not give fans an introduction now when he is a part of the Empire, not the remnant and whatever scatterfuck thing it is when we come to meet it in the Mandoverse. So yeah, I think Thrawn is the choice here. And like, it makes me afraid. This is the only thing that gives me pause about Tony being because
Tony.
He won't do something like Thrawn because he's Tony.
Exactly. Like, even though Thrawn is an integral part, like Thrawn is one of the most important Imperial players in the galaxy at this time, Tony won't use him because Tony doesn't want to use him. Like, but even though he makes perfect sense for this timeline, he is an integral part of everything that's happening in terms of the Imperial Navy and their power structure and the Imperial Navy's ability to hunt down rebel cells. That was his fucking thing. Like, I'm worried that Tony's going to be like, well, this Thrawn guy, like, he's
Too
a
much
cartoon
fan
guy.
service,
He's a fucking
fan fiction, canon.
And like, he's going to look at it like that and not realize that, yeah, like there's fan service and he's a cartoon person because this dude is super fucking important to the story that's being told now.
And I don't think either one of us are talking like he gets a credited role. I mean, it could be a scene in the first in the 2 seasons of Andor. As long as he's established as being this figure in the Empire that is competing against other Imperials that want the Death Star, it just makes sense. Like, I mean, he could just be at a meeting for the Death Star, speak his mind in a way that fans get like, okay, he's not just another Piet or Ozzel that's going to get fucking choked out at some point in time. Like, when this guy speaks, these dirtbags at the highest levels of the Empire listen, and they listen intently because they know if they don't, they're probably going to get fucked, either from Thrawn himself or his buddy that wears black robes in the Emperor. So, yeah, he makes perfect sense, but as you said, because he makes perfect sense, I see Tony saying, blue guy, red eyes, animation only, fanboyism, not happening. Too cynical. Abort. Bring in some random descendant of Tarkin. That will make more sense. They'll see how smart I am now. So, yeah, I got you.
We'll see.
There's no way. Bat's saying Whiff, they just talked about him. We never see him. If they do that, then everything we've ever said about Dave Filoni is false. Plain and simple.
Yeah,
I mean, don't. Go ahead.
You have to, like, I can't stress enough how important it is for Thrawn to be included here, because I also don't think that people are drawing enough like threads between Andor and Ahsoka as a series. Like, those two should be very tightly linked together, even though there is a large swath of time that is separating it, because both of those series or both of those time periods hinge so heavily on the character of Thrawn. Like, if you choose to ignore Thrawn in Andor, you're choosing to ignore one of the biggest players in the Empire at that time, who had a very big effect on what was going on in the galaxy. Like, if you choose to just replace Thrawn, like if you just take the character of Thrawn and put somebody else in his shoes doing what he's supposed to be doing, you have essentially, like, you've really disrupted that whole timeline. And that is my biggest fear for this series. Like, there are ways that you can make this series and not include Thrawn, and it be okay to not include Thrawn.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the linchpin, but he's like the butter on top of your dinner roll. You know what I mean? Like, he can make things that much better, because it's a nod to his importance to the era, but it's also you're foreshadowing his importance to the Mandoverse timeline. Which, you know, if you think about it, if we're 5 from A New Hope, we're about 5 or 6 from Return of the Jedi. So, you know, we're only going to be we're talking about 17 years from Andor season 1 is when the Mandoverse is mostly taking place. So not even 2 full decades.
So
I can do simple math.
And the worst thing that they could do, like the worst thing that Gilroy could do, and I could see him doing this, is just inserting his own character that is doing essentially the same thing that Thrawn is supposed to do. Okay,
that's why fucking Pablo Hidalgos and those people exist. Like, that's something you have to be like, no! You can't have a Grand Admiral human that also, you know, likes to study his enemy's culture and he has a museum in his office. No! That only one character can be that guy, and that's the blue dude with red eyes. That's it.
Yeah, you can't do that. So,
you're right. I mean, this is something Tony could definitely get a little too smart for himself on a call like that. So maybe the powers that be came in and like, listen, dude, you gotta do us at least this one cynical cameo, because we need it for what we're building in the future. Yeah. All right.
It's like they need to give him just enough rope to not be able to hang himself.
Yeah.
Like, Like, you can have as much rope as you want, but as soon as it gets to the point to where you're not only going to hang yourself, you're going to hang us, is where we cut you off.
See.
Like,
we'll see. I mean, dude, hey,
we'll see how
like
that
I said, we could tune in on the 21st, and both of us could get on, the Star Wars Time show the next week and just sit there and be like, oh my God, he really is. He is God's gift to Star Wars fans. Look at us. We're fucking stupid.
Yeah, it could
and we'll
be.
start the cult of Gilroy. But, until I see it and kind of view it through my 40 plus years of Star Wars fanboyism, I'm just going to go in even keeled. I don't have high expectations. I surely don't have low expectations, but I'm going to go in as a fan, blank mind, see what we get. Is there too much Tony arrogance, or is he right? Like his cast is seemingly telling us. So let's see here. All right, man. Good question of the week there. You even got us talking about it a little bit. So I guess I did okay. It just depends on how many people actually replied. So the final way to get involved in the Star Wars Time show each week, especially on the live stream, this is where this fan entry point is so much fun, the live stream, but you can still listen on the podcast version, and that is the top 5 Star Wars fan artist features of the week. So the way this works, all week long from Tuesday to Monday, make sure to tag by using #tag Star Wars Time Show. You can't even type @Star Wars Time Show anymore. It's got to be #tag Star Wars Time Show, and then use #Star Wars Time Show on any and everything you consider Star Wars art or Star Wars creativity. I'll look at those every morning and I will share them, or as the community calls it, I will feature them at Star Wars Time Show on Instagram. And then on Monday, after he's put in a hard day's work, maybe had a little dinner, put his robe and slippers on, got himself some hot cocoa, Nick will sit down and choose the top 5 of those previously weeks-long featured artists. And that is where we are at today. That is what the segment is all about, Nick. So who do you got for your top 5 spanning August 29 to September 5, 2022?
2022. So the first one up this week is @Gree01. And what Gree01 gives us is an awesome shot of our favorite bounty hunters. And I gotta say, I love his choice to put Boba Fett way in the background and put the real hero up front.
Hell yeah.
Greedo.
The most badass bounty hunter in the galaxy. You hit it, man. And that's what drew me to the shot too. It's like, whoever... When you we're talking like the Dirty Dozen of Star Wars bounty hunters, the Empire or the Executor Bridge bounty hunters, right? Everyone knows what I'm talking about. If you don't, you're not a Star Wars fan. But Nick's right. It's always Boba Fett. He's always the main subject, right? It's always about Boba. He's always looked the coolest. That's why he, became the most infamous of those Executor Bridge bounty hunters. So I'm with you, dude. I think it's that. It's the fact that Greedo is the lead, like literally, like it's like it's Greedo's posse now. He got the job for IG-88 and Boba and Boss, no one else. But I think it's the fact it's that moon in the background makes it even more epic of a lineup of bounty hunters. So it's Greedo main subject with the moon in the back, just makes this shot pop as a I would call it an atypical Star Wars bounty hunter toy photography shot for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So beautiful work.
Greedo!
Love seeing the bounty hunters out there. Greedo this is the alternate reality where Greedo does not get roasted in the fucking Mos Eisley Cantina, and he makes it out. So yeah, I love it. @Gree GREE01 on Instagram. Make sure to give them a follow. They have definitely been in the top 5 before. So good stuff there. Next up is an awesome crossover mashup shot from @Chewie_the_Pooh, POOH. And what we see is a predator riding on the back of a of a black, oh my gosh, now
Rancor.
I'm like losing my mind. Yes, Rancor, a black Rancor, so not the Rancor that we see in Return of the Jedi. And the Rancor is eating Boba Fett.
Hey,
So,
do you see on the Rancor? It's like a dog's chain, right? Or like a leash to take a dog out. I love that nice little touch there.
I almost said Rathtar. I don't know why Rathtar popped in my head. I was like, I know it's not like Rathtar, but I know it starts with an
fucked
R.
a Rancor, maybe, but no, it's a Rancor, and
Rancor.
There's been an influx of Predator v Star Wars ever since Prey dropped a month ago at this point in time.
Yeah,
and they have been relatively pretty excellent. But you're right, Chewie the Pooh here. This one's real fun because it usually when they do a crossover, the Star Wars guys or girls, they're usually winning. Here, Chewie the Pooh's like, no, Predator is the Predator. I don't give a fuck about Boba Fett in his half Beskar suit. The Predator is going to win, and it's going to win by riding a Rancor and eating Boba Fett. So I like some of the choices here to bring this crossover to life. But what the fuck is a Pooh, by the way? I've always wanted, like, Winnie the Pooh, a Pooh bear. Is there such thing as a Pooh bear? What is a Pooh?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I've what is a POOH?
Because didn't you see there's some horror movie coming out like set in the Winnie the Pooh universe or something like that?
Yeah, right? Yeah, it was. Or there is a horror movie because it's like now in public domain. Like it's public domain now, so they can do whatever they want with it. It says Pooh was the name of a swan in When We Were Very Young. So it was like another book by A.A. Milne, and then she just like gave that name to Winnie the Pooh.
So it's like, I mean, does he have can he not wipe his ass appropriately? Does he usually have dingleberries? I mean, I've never really understood how you become the Pooh. But we do understand that at Chewie_the_Pooh is good at bringing some Star Wars figures to life. So check him out on Instagram at Chewie the Pooh.
100%. Next up is at True Perry.
I was wondering if you were going to select this one when I put it up because I was like, this is just a very well crafted scene.
It is. It's a very well crafted scene between the two most famous Jedis in the Mandoverse, Ahsoka and Grogu.
What about Luke? Damn it! How could you do Luke like that? Luke's a Jedi Master. He's a man. He's a tough guy.
He's a toughie. But so what we see is this, I mean, like it's pretty close to like a scene recreation of something we saw on Corvus during season 2 of Mandalorian when Ahsoka is essentially having her own little powwows with Grogu in the middle of the Corvus forest. The only difference is not all the trees are dead. But it is just a well-crafted scene. You have Ahsoka sitting there on a tree stump, little Grogu standing next to a light, a little lantern light there, and some other little set dressing, and they're just having like that forced conversation that Ahsoka essentially kind of, that's how she finds, talks to him. Like she tells Mando, his name's Grogu. You never met him before? We used to hang out in the temple all the time.
Essentially, they spocked it up and had a bit of a mind meld without speaking words. Yeah. So, yeah, man, it's like, listen, it's not some crazy action scene. It's just the way that True Perry, I got to do it every time. It's the way that he staged it. Because I actually went to the post and looked at the behind the scenes. The figure itself, there's a lot of third-party soft goods on it. Like he's got some fresh soft pants on there. I think that really enhances the Ahsoka. The soft goods robe really enhances it. But True Perry, see that lamp there? He fucking made that. He's like, hey, I want to make this scene, nice. So he made it himself. The back, and it's out of here. The background is digital. But everything in the foreground, like where the characters are, that's all practical. Moss and little trees and stumps and sticks and shit like that. So I don't know. When I used to dabble in this, I always appreciated seeing someone set up, and I really enjoyed the scene that True Perry was able to craft out of what he used practically to kind of build this set.
Yeah, no, it was a really well done shot that uses so many good practical effects, and then, like you said, blends really perfectly into that background.
A lot of good tricks going on in here for toy photography.
Yeah, 100%. So at True Perry, TruuPPERI on Instagram. Make sure to give them a follow. Next up is at Geeky83, and this is just a fun, cheeky little
Happy
shot.
hour on the Death Star.
Yeah, I mean, this is like an alternate universe where like when C-3PO is like bumbling his way around the Death Star, he like walks into a bar and he's just like, "Oh, sit down and have a nice oil, nice shot of oil." But I mean, essentially, what you see is 3PO sitting down at a bar with a bunch of stormtroopers who are all kind of leaning over, hands up, trying to get the bartender's attention, get a drink. It's like happy hour at the Death Star, and so it's a fun shot.
I mean, Geeky 83's been putting out a lot of, I guess, what you'd call Star Wars humor shots or not serious Star Wars, and I think it's becoming one of my favorite genres. In fact, I'm glad Nick picked our next candidate because Intergalactic Raptor kind of went the same path here, just something completely opposite to what you'd expect to see in a Star Wars shot or a piece of Star Wars art. But back to Geeky 83, it is. I just, you got that one trooper, he's like casually leaning on the bar. The other one, like
that's such a good pose.
That's what it is. The posing in this shot is also excellent. You got the other ones with their fingers up. I mean, a lot of this reminds me of all this stupid ass bar rescue reruns I've been going through, and how bars should be ran, and how bartenders should, hey, what do you need? Make 2 drinks at once, blah, 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 that type of stuff. But it's just Geeky A3. I love the idea, setting up the bar in there, like the practical bar set with the stools. To me, it almost looks like 3PO is the bartender.
Oh, 3PO is the bartender. Yeah, at first I thought that he was like
that's
at
probably
the bar,
why
but yeah, he's
everyone's waiting
bartender.
Because he's probably talking to all the machines because we know he can interpret robot language quite well. But it just the casual poses of the troopers, that's what sells this, because they look like they're getting ready for the weekend. They've had their 5-day shift on the Death Star. They're hitting 3PO's bar on the way out before they can remove their armor and enjoy their weekend in their bunkers, or whatever you want to call it, barracks on the Death Star.
The barracks on the Death Star, yeah, for sure. So good stuff at Geeky83 on Instagram. And last up, Matt, you teased it. Here it is. This is at it's so great, at intergalactic_raptor on Instagram. And I mean, talking about like an irreverent, funny kind of Star Wars shot. I mean, this hits it's many
perfect,
notes,
man. I mean, I want a T-shirt that says "The Amazing Sheev" on it now.
Yeah, I know. So what we're seeing here is the Amazing Sheev or magic show. So what we have is Palpatine in his robes, and he's putting on a magic show. We see cards flying through the air. We see him pulling porgs out of hats. We see a holocron on the desk. We see one of his Imperial guards standing there holding a porg, and he's got a magic wand, and he's flipping it around, making all this magic stuff happen. So
it is. It's just like anytime you get Emperor Palpatine in a situation that is so anti-Palpatine, it just works, and that's 100% what this shot is from Intergalactic Rapper. It's so anti-Sheev. I mean, the best part is, to me, Nick, the way it reads to me, it's like Sheev, he's so bad to his core that even when he's trying to do magic, he's still cheating. Like, he's got the porgs shoved up his sleeves just in case maybe the force isn't working the way he wants it to. Or even his tricks are already failing. Like, it's almost like he's bumble fucking this show that he's giving to his Imperial guards, because you got one porg is floating away with some of the playing cards that were on the table. Another one's coming out of the hat. Like you said, a guard's holding one that had escaped from Sheev's other arm. Who knows? But I think the sign in the back, where it's literally like Sheev was in his room like a 4-year-old getting ready to do a little show for his parents. Like, sometimes my daughter will still, even at 6, she'll come out after being in her room for an hour and be like, "Oh, look what I did, and look who I am now." It's like Sheev. He had some free time. He's like, "You know what? I'm going to show these guys my magic tricks." And he makes himself a little hand-drawn sign, calls himself the Amazing Sheev Magic Show, and rolls out into the hallway, and whoever's there to watch or listen, that's who he performs for. So it's a great little story contained in this little 1:1 ratio shot from Intergalactic_Raptor on Instagram.
100%. Make sure to go give all of the top 5 a follow if you're not following them already. But that is the end of the top 5, and that is the end of the show. Matt and I gave you 30 minutes of Lord of the Rings talk and then 2 hours of Star Wars talk, so I hope you enjoyed it.
Not too bad. I mean, I was going to say, we still managed to kind of hit our usual time here, about 2:30, 2:35-ish. So, hey, if you're new here and you liked what you listened to, why don't you head on over to StarWarsTime.net as the show is about to end. The reason to go there is, well, in between shows, especially if there is stuff to talk about, that's where we will post it. We're always trying to inform Star Wars fans on a daily basis. So if you can't wait to figure out what is important in the land of Star Wars, make sure to head to StarWarsTime.net. While you're there, like I said, and if you are new, you can find all of our podcast platforms. And yes, we're on all of them, at least the good ones. So please check those out. You can get us on Amazon, Spotify, Pandora, iTunes, Google, like I said, TuneIn, this shit called Deezer. I mean, half the places, I don't even know if they exist anymore, but the podcast is there for you to find if you go to StarWarsTime.net. If you prefer the live stream angle, you want to see us in person, look at our lovely beards, although mine should be hacked down by next week. You can also go to StarWarsTime.net, scroll around, click on the YouTube icon. That'll take you to our channel, youtube.com/StarWarsTimeShow. If you are new to the YouTube feed and you're sitting here watching now while I'm going through all this bullshit that you're rolling your eyes over, why don't you go ahead and do a thumbs up for the live stream, as well as a like, which is the thumbs up. So leave a comment and sub to the show. Turn on notifications. We won't bother you with them. Not that you get them anyways unless you have the YouTube app installed. So as we tell everyone that is new here, or those that have been here since day one, there really is always time for Star Wars time. So we appreciate you tuning in every week to the live stream if you do that on Tuesdays, or the podcast version on Wednesdays. Don't forget, when you're out there selling us, one of the main reasons to listen to the Star Wars Time Show, besides wasting multiple hours of your life a week, is, if you do listen to it, the Force. Yes, that one. Even without midichlorians, will be with you always.